that recommended that people wear masks at this meeting. I wasn't even aware of it until I showed up here today. I don't have my mask, and the recommendation is not. I'm not going to mandate anybody to do anything, including myself. So it's to your. It's to however you attempt to choose. Feel comfortable. Okay. With that said, yeah, and you know, and next time we'll put it on the notice as to whether masks should be required or not. Okay, but so long as it's a recommendation and not a mandate, I think we're good.
It was very last minute.
And it was, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to call to order the meeting of the, tonight's meeting for the Raleigh Planning Board. Tonight's August 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And we have 3 items that are continued public hearings on the agenda for this evening, and we've got some additional business which we'll get to at the second part of the agenda. We do have a request from one of the applicants that council for the first item, which is 60 Main Street, may not be able to be present today until 7:30. Okay, between 7:30 and 7:45, and they've made a request that we continue the matter until they're able to be here. And because they've are going to be here within 30 or 40 minutes, I think it's appropriate. But I will ask the board. I'm going to ask Mr. Moriarty to recuse himself for this vote, but I'm going to ask the board if we can continue the first matter until later in tonight's agenda, until 7:45. So it's my motion, and Jack's second, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So all we're doing is moving this off until 7:45 this evening. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for the definitive subdivision and Osrd special permit hearing for Danielsville LLC. Bruce Tompkins, trustee of the Tompkins and Desjardins, is the property owner. It's map 9, lot 23, located in the outlying zoning district. So, good evening. We have. How are you?
Good, Mr. Chairman. Jim DeCola is here. Thank you, members of the board.
Evening, and thanks for coming.
Thank you for moving me forward, or should I thank council?
I'm happy to be here.
So I have Kirk. I emailed. Yeah, here we go. Kirk's got it up on the screen. I've got copies of the schematic sketch here of sheet C7 from the full plan set. And what this shows, a little different, not different, but just some additions to what you had seen earlier. That the additions include the shared septic system, the collection of the system and how it's going to work. The system is known as a septic tank effluent gravity system, or SLEG, SLEG, STEG. And what that means is that this system is being designed to collect sewage for all the houses. Sewage will go into individual 2,000-gallon septic tanks. And then
each look, is that what we're looking at?
yeah, so that's what's shown here in magenta. As
okay.
you can see here on the screen. So this particular system is designed to have each house have its own septic tank, then a discharge from that septic tank into a primary collection system. There's actually 3 points of entry. Lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be collected and then go underneath the street towards a pump station. This will be a dual pump station, prefabricated company called Liberty Pumps, which makes a lot of pumps for pump chambers. They have a prefabricated dual pump station. They'll also have backup generation. Second feed is from lots 6 and 7, which heads to the north. It then goes to the pump station. Third feed is from lots 8 and 9, which will flow by gravity all of them will flow by gravity to the pump station. So this is the main concept of the shared septic system, just so you get a sense of it. We're just about ready to formalize it and present it to the Board of Health. The board's also asked us to look at the legal issues and the covenant and the homeowners association and how the maintenance of the system will work, because shared septic systems are required to be inspected every 3 years. So what will happen is the inspection will look at the individual cleanouts, because this system, which is popular throughout the country, it's actually recommended by the Water Environment Federation, which is the national organization, the well-recognized professional organization that addresses water and wastewater issues for the engineering community. Camp Dresser, McKee, Metcalf, and Eddy, any of the big engineering firms that work on major collection systems for the Boston Water and Sewer Commission, for instance, or the MWRA. They all look towards the Water Environment Federation, and the Water Environment Federation has a manual called Alternative Sewer Systems, which we're following as a guide, as a lot of cities and states use for protocols and guidance that they have. So we're following the recommendations of the Water Environment Federation, and this particular system will have 4-inch lines coming out. And then we're still sizing this particular main feed here, but it'll be either a 6 or 8-inch SDR 35, similarly going this way. Because the sewage is going out of the septic tank into the collection system, we don't need traditional sewer manholes. We can just use cleanouts at these points.
What about the road crossings? I think manholes make more sense at your road crossings, no?
Well, we're going to have details of that on the Board of Health submission. You'll see they're going to be more. They'll be cast iron manhole covers. They're just not going to be a traditional built brick and sewer manhole. Precast concrete. It doesn't need to be because we're dealing with that effluent again.
Right.
Free of solids and sediment.
So I don't want to get you off course here at all, but I do know that we all looked at something from the Board of Selectmen today. And is this at all in response to that, or?
I haven't seen anything.
Seen this, but the Board of Selectmen, that submittal that Larry is looking at right now.
Right.
That submittal, I sent or had them to relook at it again.
Okay.
And along with the other departments, both the health department and Board of Selectmen.
Because the comment, I think, I don't know if you shared it with Mr. DeCoulis or not, but you did.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The Board of Selectmen has raised the concern of the private rights in what will eventually be a public way. And because ultimately we can do what we're going to do, and you do have our support in what you're proposing here for this shared system. But if ultimately the town doesn't accept the road, then you're no further along. So what are you doing to address those concerns? Are you just going to go to them?
My understanding from what Kirk shared today was the issue was specifically related to the stormwater management. Is that right, Kirk?
No, it's related to the easements having to do with the septic system.
Oh, the sewage.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the health department made virtually the same comment. They actually, if you guys go to page 13.
Now, what are you looking at? I haven't
This is
seen
actually
anything.
this is the agenda packet.
Oh, okay.
But this is actually the messages that the same ones you got. The health inspector said, I don't believe the health department has the authority to approve a private septic system design containing 3 easements under a public road until we are advised that the town has approved this. It is also unknown if the road would be accepted at the town meeting or possibly remain a private road. So that's what he's talking about, is whether the easements would be public or private, and whether or not the town would accept a public road with private easements on them, despite the kind of technology that you're talking about.
Well, it sounds more like a legal issue, right? I mean, the issue here is whether or not the town wants to accept a public way where there's a private easement underneath the way. Or
That's absolutely, that's the facts we're trying to, and without clarity on that, I don't know, I mean, I think, do you want to try to get that resolved before?
Oh, absolutely, no,
Yeah.
I'll definitely, I mean, the object here is to get public acceptance.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't get accepted, we'll keep it a private way. You know,
But the problem with the private way is this is really approved on the condition and on the premise that there's going to be a donation of a right-of-way that provides continuity and connectivity to other developments. So if it's a private way, we don't get that.
Why wouldn't you? Why, if we provide an easement to the town, why wouldn't you get that?
Well, because
Well, it would be, you, like, say for
The
instance.
entire road.
the entire road,
Yeah.
Well, the entire road through all the way.
And then we depend on you to maintain that and tie it into
Yeah.
a public
Look,
way on
we
either
want
end.
to do it, we want the town to accept a public way, but I'm just looking at this as a fallback.
I'm just saying,
yeah,
right?
okay. I mean, because that's the thing, we can only approve, we can approve, and then you gotta deal with public acceptance on your
snow
own.
plowing.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think we have to be possibly, we just need to be mindful as we approve this, that it's possible, and particularly if we know that the town is not gonna approve it, that we'd be thinking that it's gonna be a private roadway, in which case all the covenants should be steered in that direction.
You should be cognizant that the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen, both, they're not recommending approval until they iron these issues out. So I don't know how, if both of those departments send like a negative.
Well, wouldn't it be helpful for both, it sounds like neither of those departments have clear guidance on it, and maybe it's a Tom Mullen question.
Yeah, it might be,
Look, it's our contention that this easement for the sewage underneath the public way is no different than a utility easement. It's no different than an easement that Verizon gets, or N-Star, National Gas, and National Grid is no different.
And I think we've even determined that there are similar private rights in Christopher.
yeah, I mean, what do you,
No, there's a private, Christopher Drive, there's a,
that was a taking, that was done as an eminent domain,
I think there are other examples of
Yeah.
private rights in
But look,
public ways.
it looks like the first order of business is to get with the selectmen, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna be the lead here, so I'll arrange that.
I mean, I do think that the Board of Health will follow the Board of
Absolutely,
Selectmen,
yeah.
but both of them are raising the issue.
Yeah, I thought the issue clerk related to the clean out, do you mind just moving the cursor a little bit so we get that little silly yellow thing up? So there's stormwater infiltration underneath the roadway, and is Larry on the phone, by the way, or is he on?
Larry, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, beautiful, hi Larry. So
Good evening.
there's two underground stormwater infiltrate, actually there's three. One of them is a small one out the front entrance at Daniels Road, but these two main ones here have a water quality treatment unit that I think we talked about at the last meeting. One of the issues that came up with the Conservation Commission at their hearing was who's going to maintain these water quality units? They're small contact units that require cleaning with a Vector truck, and it's a pretty simple, straightforward operation and maintenance protocol, but it will fall either under the jurisdiction of the Highway Department or the Homeowners Association. The Conservation Commission's thoughts on this at the last hearing were that it would be best that the Highway Department take care of it because it's town property, there's potential public liability issues with the homeowner. If this is going to be a public way, what are the liability issues with the private homeowners association maintaining a stormwater structure? So that's the other issue I'll address with the selectmen.
Have you also talked to the highway?
Right, Patrick, yep,
Yeah.
no,
We don't use a vac con, I was told. We use clamshells to clean the catch basins, so it'd be special for just this,
Yeah.
right?
yeah. I mean, it's not a big deal. I mean, Troy, you're probably familiar with Vectors, right? We use them all the time in the environmental business.
Let me just suggest though, is if the town doesn't have that equipment and won't have that commitment, doesn't otherwise want to contract for the maintenance, and I do agree that it'd be better for the town to maintain it than the homeowners association, could you engineer a different solution that didn't require that clean out?
Well, we're trying to meet the stormwater management standards, and Larry's got a little bit of a simpler solution with a traditional tank, but that still needs to get cleaned out. There's really not much difference between the two of them. This actually has better performance. It's the answer, I guess, is no, because
Okay.
we wouldn't meet the stormwater management standards that Mass DEP has established for residential subdivisions like this.
Well,
So
I mean, I'm with you if it provides better water handling but if the town doesn't have the equipment or isn't gonna, I guess that's part of the acceptance.
yeah. Well, Patrick doesn't own the equipment to clean out the sumps on the catch basins either. I mean,
Okay.
he contracts that out. So
Oh, well, if they're already contracting with somebody, then just.
Yeah.
But the issue is, it's a
It's
different
piece of
system.
equipment.
One's a cable system with clamshells
Yeah.
and it scoops out. The other one is a vac on truck, which is a big tube
Vac,
that
it's
sucks
like
it
a big
up.
vacuum cleaner in the back of a truck.
So, I mean, a lot of towns use that for catch basins now, but I'm sure it's a little more expensive. I don't, that's
Yeah.
something
Mr.
that
Chairman,
ask Patrick.
Mr. Chairman, Larry?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Graham.
Yeah, I just on this particular point, I did have a conversation with Pat Snow on Monday, and He does contract out cleaning of the catch basins, done normally in the fall. But he is not, he really doesn't want to have to contract out for a back truck for these two proposed separators that are on the plan now. So he would prefer that detail or that responsibility lie with the homeowners association as opposed to him. And also there is a requirement for monitoring of the cleaning of those BMPs. So I've spoken with he as well about perhaps the Concom being the entity or the jurisdictional authority for the town that would have and keep track of the monitoring, keep the records. So that's what I've learned this week from the town, both that stuff.
No, I appreciate that. That's the information. I mean, it seems like in the big scheme it'd be better if the town were to do it, but they have good reasons for not wanting to. And now we have two reasons to think that maybe the HOA is going to be responsible for this road maintenance. I don't know.
I mean, Pat's comment was if I had a dozen or 15 of these or so, that would be different. But these are the only two that he has, so he doesn't want to get into that business now just for these two, and recommends that they go to the homeowners.
Yeah, and we talked with the Conservation Commission about it because these units are becoming more and more frequent. Towns that are on the water, like Gloucester, any of the towns on Cape Ann, Manchester, they've got these types of water quality units to prevent pollution from going into coastal embayments and into coastal areas. So you're going to see more of them. And then maybe there's going to be some tipping point, you know, or 10 or 12 when Patrick finally folds and says, okay, I'm ready to start, you know, taking over. But maybe what we could do is work the homeowners association language to allow for that possible transition, you know, in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they're responsible, and at some point the town may decide, okay, let's just start taking responsibility.
And I hope we can come up with a workable solution. My concern is that the same type of rights of private rights in the public right of way are going to be a problem for the town. Yeah. But you know, let's see what.
Yeah, it sounds like there's 2 or 3 issues I need to address with the selectmen.
Yeah.
They may defer to council on, you know, which would make sense.
Because he may have a solution.
Yeah. Yep.
You know. All right. But
the only other thing that I wanted to present on the plan here is my green's not showing up on this curve. Oh, a little bit. On your plan, you might see it in green, but there's bubbles. There's the limit of the tree line and the clearing that you'll see here that you had asked for at the last hearing. So you know, you'll see the edge of the tree line here, and we're showing still a significant amount of trees in that open loop area. That's where the reserve area is. Although there's proposed contour lines, we just didn't have a chance to modify those before the hearing. But this may in fact just stay in a natural state in here, and then this would just be the open area here.
And the darker green is the reserve?
No, those are 2 primary areas for the Presby, and the reserve area would be in this area here to the east, to the south.
Gotcha.
And then the last remaining thing we're dealing with right now, until we get formal comments from Larry, is the construction of the pedestrian boardwalk. From this point here over to the other side where the open space is, there's 3 possible piling alternatives we're looking at. I think you all saw the detail on the last detail sheet C15 in the last hearing. It's a it's a prefabricated 4-foot by 10-foot aluminum structure with polypropylene decking that allows light to go through. It's about the size of the conference table, and they're only about 60 or 70 pounds, and they're easy to move around and they're lightweight. Question is, what do they get supported on? The company that in Maine that manufactures these, and there's other companies in the Midwest and in Canada that make the very similar types of units. They have dock legs that have spreader foots on the bottom, almost like the lunar module lander, you know, where they just like sit on the bottom of the wetlands, or the top of the wetland surface. We're not too crazy about that because there's a good chance that in the wintertime they may shift, there may be ice and snow, and there may be some shifting that goes on. We want these to be long-term, and that's the reason why we've gone to aluminum and plastic for the decking. So we're looking at two different piling systems. We're looking at a helical pile system, where it's actually like a big screw that goes in, it screws them right into the wetlands. And then the second piling system would be a traditional pile system with probably composite piles. They're basically fiberglass telephone poles or utility poles, if you will. And those get you, the benefit of that is that there's no discharge of arsenic or chromium, any of the heavy metals that pressure-treated wood typically has. So we're still working on that detail right now. What we're going to probably end up with here is a profile across here just showing the bottom of the wetlands, water level, how the pilings will get installed. And then the only other issue that comes with this is how do you construct it? So we may show some temporary construction methods. We're looking at possibly floating a barge along here with a small mini excavator on it. So that'll be detailed, and that's going to be presented to the Concom, and the planning board will get a copy of that as well. But again, the object here is to come up with a good long-term stable platform that we don't have to worry about for 20 or 30 years. And that'll fall on the responsibility of the homeowners association. That's something that, given all the issues with stormwater and sewage easement, we don't want to put another burden on the town. So we're going to have the homeowners association be responsible for making sure that it's safe and stable for the life of it and the use of it. So that's it. I'm sure Larry's got some comments.
I want to get to them in just 1 second. One thing I just wanted to ask you about, at the end of the right-of-way, before where it terminates, where the roadway's right there. No, even actually at the end,
Towards the wetlands.
towards the wetlands. We intended to put a couple of parking spaces there, right?
Yep, there's 3 parking spaces right here.
Could we just also show on the plan where the alternate spaces would be if that easement were opened up? Because right now they're right in the right of way.
I think we talked about doing parallel parking.
Oh, okay, is that what we did?
Yeah,
Oh.
if that easement opens up, and again, we've looked at 3 alternatives, right?
Yeah.
This is the worst one.
Right.
Especially after we did our geotechnical investigation in March, where we saw that marine sediments are down over 40 feet deep. But if that ever happened, what would be the reason for, if you're driving across the other side, what would be the reason of parking here?
That's a good point, yeah. All right, well, I just wanted to make sure we didn't have, permanent parking in the middle of a right of way.
Yeah.
But, that's, and I don't want to be locked into it in terms of having approved it in that location, so as long as it's somehow indicated on the plan that it's, so, subject to future layout or something like that.
Should there be any kind of like signage or designation for public, because you still want to provide public access to the walkway, is.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's the purpose of it.
Yeah.
I think we've got a sign proposed. I think if you look at the signage plan on sheet C15, I think we got a sign proposed there for that purpose, Kirk. Yeah, the full plan set. I'm pretty sure it's.
I didn't give them the full plan.
I think it's on the pavement striping and signage detail.
That's right, I think I saw that last week.
Yeah.
So, Larry, certainly if you got any questions or comments, now's a good time.
Yeah, I have a few I'll get to in a minute. But going back to the clearing limits that are shown now on the plan, I don't really think they're realistic in a sense that there's not enough room there really to construct the houses if they fall into the footprints that are depicted here. I would like to see them pull back so that really there's more room between the house and the trees. It would be nice to do it this way, but you can't drop the house in there with a helicopter. And as well, there's going to be some trees in there that probably should be taken out, because they would be hazardous, falling on a brand new house or an old house as far as that goes. So I'd like to see the clearing limits pulled back, really more clearing, and less green left, but more realistic. And as well, I think that some lengthy tangents could be put on the edge of those clearing limits, such that when this development gets started, they could be staked and flagged ahead of any work, excavation or work or clearing on the property. Otherwise, they're very likely just to not to succumb to or you know, a guy that comes in to clear this property. So that's my comment on that, and I'll put that in writing later. I've reviewed the plans, not maybe in the depth that I'd like to. I was unable the last few days to wrap up my comments and have my secretary transcribe them into a report this evening, but I will get that out in the next few days, by Monday at least, if not the end of the week, and I'll send a copy to Gula. So there's probably 30, 40, 50 comments that I have, but I won't go through all of them tonight, that's for sure. I don't think we need to, but I want to hit the high points, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to.
Sure, please do, yes.
There's a requested waiver for the width of the streets, which I'm in agreement with. The 18 feet on the one-way and 24 feet on the two-way. However, there are some conflicts, Jim, in the plans and also in the stormwater management plan. A couple places it refers to 22 foot of pavement. So I just want to be clear that what you're proposing is 24 feet.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. So there's a little cleanup to do there. On sheet C4 and also on sheet C15, if you already touched on this, is that I think the board should see a lot more detail on the proposed pedestrian boardwalk. It's just that one little panel section on C15 and what you're looking at here, basically. So we would expect that to be coming along. And you did mention, Jim, the helical screws. I've had some experience with them in a marsh where it's tidal and get some pretty good flows through there, and they really work well. And so, you know, that's one of the several options you're considering. I, like you, don't think that the feet sitting on the marsh would provide, you know, longevity, a good stable footing for the boardwalk for the years to come. So I think one of your latter two options is more appropriate. I also had a comment about the shared septic system, so glad to see that coming on the plan here. Although it's a Board of Health, it needs to be on the plans, and the issues that may come up with respect to where our manholes and cleanouts, et cetera, they should all be on the plans. I'm glad to see that coming up. This is the biggest one, really, that I've come up with. That's quite a design change. And that is, I also talked with Pat Snow, as I mentioned earlier, about the separators, but I also talked to him about the infiltration systems being beneath the pavement. And where we have the room here, and I think we have plenty of room to do this, he and I both would much prefer, strongly recommend to get INF2 and INF3 out from under the pavement. Not necessarily entirely out of the right of way, but it will require, obviously, an easement off of maybe lots 2 and 3 and lot 5, but to scoot them out of the way, and I think there's room to do that. So that's probably a significant change to this, but after seeing this and discussing it with Pat, that's what we, you know, would like to see happen with that. I have not, Jim, been able to talk to Caltech, but on INF 1, you may know the answer to this, but you're taking the full volume credit for the separator row, and I don't know if that's appropriate or not. I will follow up with Caltech on that unless you want to bounce in right now. If you know that in your stormwater caps, taking full credit for a separator row is appropriate.
Yeah, it is, Larry. It complies with the stormwater standards. And I'd be glad to provide supporting documentation on that.
I need to understand that, so I'll get a hold of Caltech and get the information on that. I presume too that you talked to Rally Light about the movement of the poles. I think you've already said that, I believe, that they're in agreement to relocating the utility poles out at Daniels Road. And I think we've got plenty of right-of-way here and only a 24-foot road, but we're starting to put a few things within that right-of-way, like sewer lines and drainage. I think there should be at least a preliminary plan worked out between yourself and Rally Light as to where there would be locations for transformers, primary and secondary and so forth. So I would like to see that, come along as we go down the permitting road here. Once we get the, I think INF1 is all set in its location, but 2 and 3 might move a little bit. I'd like to get, Jim, 1 additional soils test. Stormwater handbook requires, in some cases, they recommend 2 or 3. 1's sufficient for me with the soils tests that you have in the vicinity. But in 1 and 2, at least, you don't have any directly there, and I think it would be appropriate to get 1 more in each of those 3 units for the record. Again, I'm just getting the high points of this, and I think also we've discussed a little bit in their stormwater management or plan and booklet in section 5, operation and maintenance plan. I think that whole plan needs to be revisited with respect to the roles of the homeowners association, the highway department, and the Concom for operation and maintenance of the drainage system. Because in my conversation, again, with Pat Snow, I don't think he, 1, wants to maintain the separator units, and 2, he's not equipped to monitor them. But he, and I believe the Concom, I had a conversation with Brent, might be able to provide the record keeping and monitoring of that. But the homeowner association, I think, is going to have to maintain it until Raleigh gets many, many more of these and contracts out, as they do with the catch basins, to have multiple separators like this clean. So I think that whole document kind of needs to be revisited, and I'll be happy to work with you on doing that. Jim, as we bring in Brent and Pat and their parts of it. As I said, there's a lot of other items. Some of them are nuts and bolts, but those are the highlights of the report.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So the biggest issue here seems to be these underground infiltration locations, units, systems 2 and 3. The reason why we put them where we did was to reduce the amount of trees coming down. You're already taking down trees in the right-of-way or underneath the pavement. We're just trying to prevent more trees from coming down. And, yeah, we can move them off, but the sewer line, which is on private property, that will have to get moved. When we shift it up, more trees are coming down. That's what we're trying to avoid. I'll talk with Patrick. I sent documentation from Caltech describing how strong these are. They're more than adequate to handle any of Patrick's heaviest equipment. I don't know, the Conservation Commission's fine with it. It seems more like an issue with Patrick.
I'm just wondering though, if the HOA is going to ultimately be responsible for the maintenance, would it be better and avoid the issue of private rights on public roads if we did get it off the right of way completely?
Well, again,
I know it would cost
More
the trees, I know, but I mean, but it would also mitigate that issue.
yeah, well, I mean, you're taking trees down to build a road.
Yeah.
You're taking down more trees, to build stormwater BMPs. That's what we're trying to avoid.
I get that, and I'm in agreement with that, but this is a component of the subdivision and the development that's hugely important and becoming much, much more important. And for instance, INF2 is about the same size as one of the 9 homes. So although I'd like to save the trees, I think that Patrick and myself I think the trade-off is there to move them out of the roadway, out from underneath the pavement. And it's not a strength issue, just in case anybody's wondering, it's not a strength issue. It's an issue about maintenance, and if they ever need to be replaced, etc., you're going to be, perhaps digging up the road. It's just not recommended. And I've had this experience myself, wearing Jim's hat with another reviewer that had the same opinion. So I'd like to see them moved out. And if there is a trade-off here, I think the gravity line of the sewer in the right-of-way, rather than on public property with an easement over that, is a good trade-off for getting the infiltration chambers out of the right-of-way.
Okay, so there's 2 issues I want to talk about here. Number 1 is the potential failure of these infiltration systems. The whole purpose of these water quality units is to prevent sediment from getting into those. That's what's going to prevent the systems from failing. All right? So as long as these are adequately maintained, this water quality unit here and here, there's no threat of those systems failing. I mean, we have excellent soils out there. We have cast iron covers. They'll be inspected. If Patrick doesn't want to inspect them, we'll have the homeowners association inspect them. There's no reason for these things to ever fail if those water quality separators are adequately maintained. Second thing is, as far as the sewer system goes, like I said, one of the issues is maintenance and inspection, because Title V has specific inspection requirements. The time of sale, for instance, you have to have the system inspected. So in a shared system, Title V mandates that a system be inspected every 3 years. Because this is a common collection system, the person who's going to be doing the inspection will need to look at cleanouts along the way. So it's a private collection system. We'd rather have them be inspecting on private property, not on the public right of way. And if the selectmen are concerned about a sewage crossing just in these 3 locations here, what's their perspective going to be if we put the whole sewage system underneath the roadway?
I'm not sure why we're talking about that trade-off. I thought, why would we even consider putting it under the roadway?
Well, Larry mentioned it.
They
Oh, I'm
got
sorry.
move the sewer line over to put those.
So I'm just saying, particularly
Okay.
at INF2, where
It would be
lots
this
2 and
one.
3.
Gotcha.
So if you
So
move
one
the
would have-
system as it's
They would
now
flip
laid
this
out
over there and
onto
slide
the
this
water,
out
onto
into
the
right
road,
way.
you're gonna have to
They couldn't
wind that gravity line from lots 1 and 2 around it and 3.
Yeah, so this gets moved up.
And that's why I was suggesting almost a flip flop here, get the drainage off of the street and bring the gravity sewer lines from those houses into the street.
Yeah, we're trying to keep the sewage system as private as possible, because it is the duty of the homeowners association. They're going to benefit from it.
I didn't realize it was a trade-off of one or the other. I'm with you though. As much of the sewer infrastructure on private land as is, because the few crossings are the issue for the town.
Yeah. So we're just trying to keep that burden on the town as minimal as possible. And then the second thing I want to describe or just mention is as far as the transformer locations go, Mark Anderson, I've been working closely with him at Raleigh Light, and the selectmen have approved utility relocations. the whole system is gonna be designed by Raleigh Light's own consultant. They have someone on board, and they're actually gonna provide the finished plan for us. So, they're working on that right now, and that'll be a separate plan that'll get submitted, that'll be under Raleigh Light's jurisdiction.
It sounds like Mr. Graham might want to see that plan to complete his review of this entire project. Is that something we can?
Yeah, I think we could possibly, well, I don't know how long, I mean, I still haven't seen a concept yet from them, but, I just don't wanna be held up. I mean, it is in Raleigh Light's jurisdiction, they are gonna be the ones that can design and construct it. You know, it's sort of like, we don't have any say in it because they want, I mean, we put some details on sheets, I think C14, about, some of the pads and the relocation from the utility pole to underground, but, you know, it's their game.
Yeah, I mean, generally, those are, you know, the transformers are set at the extension of sidelines just within the right of way.
Yeah,
So, so, you know, we've got a couple of things going on in places like between lots 4 and 5 and 2 and 3. You know, that's, you know, we need to just have a coordination. It doesn't have to be a final plan. But they would be able to do it. And the other part of that is, whatever they do, I'm sure they're gonna do, with in mind, this being possibly extended on through and tying in to their Weathersfield grid. And so that might be a bit more of a, you know, a layout than what might normally be here for that.
Yeah, no, Larry, Mark and the consultants are aware of that, and we're providing either 1 or 2 extra conduits for that possible future extension into the 55-foot easement. Yeah, so that's part of the consideration.
So I think it sounds like the biggest issue we might have here is getting those infiltrators out of the pavement. But that's my recommendation at this point, and I think that's Pat Snow's preference, at least, if not his recommendation.
How does the board feel about that? I mean, can I ask?
It doesn't bug me either way. I don't see him failing.
I have no problem with it.
I prefer the cleanouts in hot top.
Yeah, I would too.
That's just my opinion. They get lost in people's yards. They get buried in people's yards. Just my opinion.
Grass clippings.
I mean, it seems to me to make sense that it'd be better for the infrastructure that's maintained by the association to be on private land. But I also, in listening to what Troy says and what Mr. Nikula says, I see why it makes sense that it go in the right of way. So I'm not disregarding what Mr. Graham was saying about it.
Decision tonight, but, I mean, I think for the next hearing,
The
we have.
homeowners association is gonna be charging maintenance of the system. Who's gonna monitor the homeowners association, make sure it's done?
That's what Brent was gonna say, yeah.
Conservation Commission. Yeah, they're gonna file reports. That's one of the things we're working with the Conservation Commission on.
But and everyone seems to agree these are very reliable systems, especially if they're properly maintained, which is always an assumption. But if it fails, or if it did need to be replaced, it would certainly be better for the town if it weren't on the town's right of way. So I mean, that's where, what am I protecting? Something that might happen 75 years from now? I don't know that I'm worried about the fallout.
No, if these water quality units are maintained, there's no threat of those ever failing.
Can you talk to Patrick to see if you could, Larry, I'm not disregarding what you say. I want him to talk to Patrick to see if we can find a way to make this saleable.
Okay.
All right.
Can I ask Jim, did you consider at all the other side of the right of way for the INF too?
Yeah, the soils weren't as good, Larry, and the topography wasn't as favorable. The land is sloping to the northeast, and it just didn't make sense to put them uphill. We're trying to take
Well, yeah, obviously they wouldn't be up gradient, they would be at the same grade, and I know you've got a bank in there, some banking in there. I just wondered if you did look at that, because that would help resolve this issue.
Yeah, well, one of the problems with infiltration field number 3, Larry, is we can't get too close to the septic system because the setback distances to, discharging sewage, there's this, I think it might be 50 feet. So we can't get, we gotta make sure that we've got adequate separation between sewage, infiltrating, and stormwater.
Right, no, I'm talking about INF two, opposite between lots 2 and 3 and 9.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have any, you're way far away from your field.
Yeah, so what Larry's suggesting is to move infiltration field 2 to the west over into this area. We were running all the utilities underground along that left shoulder, but I mean, that's a possibility. And then what do? Do we run the utilities down the right shoulder, Larry, and then cross?
Well, you only had, if I recall, you only had the electric in the left shoulder, and you've got water and gas in the street, which is another comment that might impact this, but normally Raleigh Water likes to see the water line not in the street as well, not under the pavement. But right now, I think you only had electric running down the left side of the road. So that, and perhaps the solution is to split it and have half of the infiltration on one side, half on the other, and somehow, you know, get your overflow from the west side through the one on the east side. Something to look at a little.
And the purpose of that, again, is just to get it out from underneath the pavement?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, I guess, thank you, Larry. I guess the only other concern I have is just timing here. I mean, we filed this in September, October last year, and we just, we're looking for an endpoint, you know, how we're gonna get to the finish line. These latest plans were filed, I think, July 3rd or the 6th, and July 6th. So, is it possible that I could coordinate directly with Larry and, except it seems like this infiltration issue is something that we need to maybe get resolved, but is it possible?
Maybe we could set up a meeting. I think we've heard a couple of board members' comments about it. If we could set up a meeting with Pat Snow, yourself, and I'm amenable to that.
Yeah, and maybe even Brent, Larry. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the only thing I asked, you know, earlier I asked, or I suggested that it's not necessary to get feedback from the board on whether you're happy with the infiltration under the pavement.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like this could be a sticking point. Can I get a decision or some direction from the board as to whether you're okay with it or whether you want us to?
So I can tell you for myself, it's a case of first impression. I've never even considered it, okay? I rely on Larry, and the board does as well. And Pat Snow is on Larry's side on the issue. That's not the end of where I wanted the inquiry to go, but right now I can't disregard what the people that are looking out for the board's interests are telling us.
Okay.
I mean, looking at 3, not much to slide net. I know you're saying trees, but what's there? 6 chambers in the roadway?
Yeah, we would slide it this way,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it would get closer to the lot 5 house, but
I think
yeah.
3 is not unreasonable to slide a little bit. 2, it doesn't bug me. It's 1 set of chambers in the road. I mean,
Well,
to repair it, you still got a lane on the other side. That one doesn't bug me.
Yeah, but 3, Troy, is only half. It's only like there's
Right, but I mean, could meet in the middle. I guess would be the point.
I think if you have an adequate explanation as to why it's done that way, and you can convince the other departments that it's the right approach, then.
Yeah, well, again, the reason is we're trying to keep this as sensitive a project as possible. We're trying to minimize the amount of trees coming down. It's all about trying to, you know, maintain. We don't want to go in and clear cut everything. And what we're trying to do is preserve this landscape as best we can, and that's why we chose to do it this way. If we move the fields off the pavement, there'll be more trees down.
Well, I mean, I think you just agreed to have a meeting with Pat Snow again, and I mean, I think if, you know, Larry, Troy just proposed something that might get the majority of the infrastructure off the right of way and certainly off the paved out from under the paved surface. I mean, is that, if we can try to mitigate it as best as possible, even if we ended up short, leaving something under the pavement, would you, I mean, is that better, or are we just leaving us?
Well, yeah, obviously anything like that is better, I guess. You know, 3, it's not gonna be able to really move 3. It might be out from under the pavement as shown on this plan, but if the road's ever extended, the whole thing is gonna be under the pavement, unless you move it right back in the face of the house.
See a problem with it in the pavement, I really don't.
Probably not
I
going
don't,
to do.
it's a strange sticking point.
But, you know, maybe the road never gets extended, and if that needs to be, you know, fixed in 20 years, it could be fixed without a lot of disruption. 2 to me is a lot different than that. It's right in the middle of the road, and
Half of it's on the road,
Half-
half isn't.
Yeah, here's the edge of the pavement right here.
Half
So
of it.
half of the system in 2 is underneath the pavement, the other half is underneath the sidewalk.
right. And these are 4-foot deep units that have, you know, a couple feet of cover and 9 inches or 12-inch stone underneath, I forget. So you're opening up a pretty good area to replace them if you need to. So 7 foot, I think your calculations are a 7-foot deep, you know, cavity. So
Yeah, that sounds
you
right.
open up a 7-foot hole in a road, you're opening up pretty much the whole road.
So they make sure.
So I'd like to see, you know, we try to get 2 out of the road.
Can you work with Patrick to see what you can do?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Sorry, that was to Mr. DeCoulis, but thank you. Yeah, we'll leave it to you guys to figure out a time for that.
So assume, let's say we meet next week. When's the next hearing occur?
September 8th.
September 8th. So, if, say the week after next, I'm able to get together with Larry and address all of the concerns and get a full set of plans, are we, you know, in pretty good shape for September 8th? I'm just trying to figure out how to get to the end.
Well, as Mr. Graham, we don't have his full set of comments back. And as a deliberative board, we really do need to hear from him. Doesn't mean he can't come in and report that he's already discussed them with you and that you're satisfied. But if that's where you are on September 8th, you've just, you know, you and Larry have worked together to address those concerns and his concerns are resolved, then I think we'll be much closer to an approval on the 8th. But if you still have issues that our technical review agent is concerned about, then I think we're still going to be talking about it.
Okay, are you okay with me meeting with Larry separately to go over his comments?
I think it's,
Set up we can arrange it for in here and have the other departments come and do a joint meeting.
I think it's up to Larry, and yes, we would, but what we're saying is if you wanted to have additional boards or representatives from boards present, maybe we could do that for you too.
I don't know if it's necessary, quite
Okay.
frankly. I think the Conservation Commission's pretty happy with things so far. The Board of Health obviously needs the full set of plans, but I guess I'm just trying to get to the meat of the planning board issues here and what's holding up, you know, getting this thing to the end.
Well, this is really my first report to the board, Jim, in all fairness to the board. So, and again, I apologize for not having it there tonight, but it will be there within the next few days. If the board could peruse it and be prepared at the next meeting to see if there's anything in that report. And there'll be a few things that I will refer to the board needing to make decisions on. But in all fairness to them, this is my first report on the definitive plan on the 15 sheets.
So if I have a full set in response to Larry's comments for the 8th, is that something that we can talk about, or?
I mean, I think you'd like us to say we'll approve it on that day.
No, I'm not asking that. I'm just trying to expedite the review. I mean, Larry's been commenting on this since it was filed in October.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, you know, it was,
Well, I think what we need is a full review from Mr. Graham and then your responses to it, okay?
Yeah.
If you can get all those things submitted with a plan that incorporates how you're responding, and we're looking at it on September 8th,
You know,
I think if if it really closes up any issues, if there are anything straggling, we can leave it as a condition.
Okay.
So if Larry's comments come out in the next couple of days and you receive those, and you can address those within a week or so and get a response that he could actually act on, and he might be able to confirm by the time of the next meeting.
Okay. And like you said, I'll provide a written response to Larry with
Right, with any revisions that needed to be seen.
specific
Yeah.
explanation of how it's being addressed. Okay, great.
All right, I know,
Not to belabor the point, but I think this is my biggest issue is, that INF2 primarily.
thank you, I think that helps him focus on what he needs to look at. I like those helix,
Helical piles,
helical
yeah.
piles better, I mean, only because they're engineered to be flawless, right?
Yeah, well, the problem is, it's always the underlying soil. You
Uh-huh.
know, we had a geotechnical investigation done in March and April, and we got really soft silts and sediments there. The blow counts were really low. And, you know, quite frankly, it's just a pedestrian bridge, so the loads aren't that high. And either the helical or the traditional pile-driven composite piles would work.
Do the pile driven go down deeper?
They go down based on the geotechnical engineers. It relies on the friction of the side of the pile to support the load. So more than likely they will go down deeper, but it's all based on what the soil conditions are and what the loading is. And it's just not very high loading.
And with all the light decking, that doesn't allow for frost heaves more?
Well, as long as we get below 4 feet.
Okay,
you know,
gotcha.
And plus, there'll be some water in the wetland through the winter, so you won't get a 4-foot frost in that wetland.
Gotcha.
Great, thank you very much.
The helical screws that I had applied on one job was in a marsh on a catwalk. Would be similar to this, maybe a little less of a load. But we placed them between, on an existing catwalk, between existing posts. And they had an open eye at the top with a bar that went through the eye that locked both of the posts that supported the catwalk. So it was a real stable, it really stabilized the whole catwalk. And if you started that way, I think it might be a real good engineered system.
Good.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. I agree. I mean, it's definitely, we're in a final match here between the helicals and the composites. And either one of them will be more than adequate with, you know, probably safety factors of 5 or 10 to address the pedestrian loads here.
All right, well, thank you, and I hope we can, you know, get things progressing over the next month so that we can.
We gotta continue.
Oh,
Yeah.
I make a motion, we continue till September 8th.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Great.
Thank you, thanks for your time, and thank you, Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Larry.
I know you're here for another matter, but I think we're gonna, are you on 60 Main Street also, Larry?
Yes, I wrote a report on that and a couple others.
Okay, good, so then, well then, stick around. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the initial item on the agenda. I think, is Jill Mann here today at this point?
Yep.
Good evening, Attorney Mann.
Good evening, Jill Mann. How are you?
1 second. Very good. I'm gonna open the continued public hearing for a site plan review for the operation of a nano brewery and tasting room consumer services establishment at 60 Main Street, further identified as Assessor's Map 15, Lot 41, which consists of approximately 1.04 acres and is located in the Central District. I think I'm gonna let Kevin Moriarty address the board at this point.
I'm gonna recuse myself from this matter.
So Kevin's recusing, leaving myself, John and Troy as the members serving at this point on this matter. So, Attorney Mann, you're representing the petitioner today. Can you summarize what we're doing today?
I most certainly am. And is it possible to be able to share my screen so that I can just show you the plans as we go through and to the public as we discuss?
I think Kirk's working on that this second.
Perfect. So I'll just introduce myself. Jill Mann here on behalf of Anonymous Brewing LLC. I've been hired to assist in securing site plan approval for this particular project. as well as, to assist in the, what that is, to assist in the obtaining of the necessary liquor license as well. So I'm going to go on to, yeah. So I just, can you see my screen? I just want to make sure. It now shows, it's coming up the plan.
Yep.
Can you see the plan?
We got it.
Wonderful. I just wanted to start with this overview plan, and then we can go through and
X on that white
review
box.
Mr. Graham's comments.
There we
But
go.
the reason why I wanted to present this plan is I had reviewed the minutes from the July 14th meeting, and there seemed to be this great concern about this property being overused, who's the users, who aren't the users. And I thought the best way to address it is always to demonstrate with a parking table that you meet the parking requirements. This site is actually, you know, a decently sized site. It's 45,000 square feet, and it only has a building that's not even 4,000 square feet. There is a lot of parking on this site. It's 40 spaces currently. And I just wanted to walk through. I know that there continues to be some discussion relative to a proposal to create a third building, and that building would be somewhere around, let's call it 2,000 square feet. While that may be true, that's not the subject of this decision or discussion. If that happens, the owner will have to go back and get site plan approval and will be required to maintain parking for the uses as permitted. Which I know this board knows. I just made this announcement to the general public who's asking this question. So if we may, I just have the parking table for 60 Main Street, and I just go through each of the uses. So in building 1, it's a 2-story building. The footprint's 1360. You know, the first floor is, it's either retail or it's an apartment. If it's an apartment, it's simply a 1-bedroom on the first floor, and that would actually only require 2 spaces. But as a retail establishment, I did the highest use that would demonstrate the most or require the most number of spaces. And that's basically 7, because the math gave me 6.8. The second floor is most certainly a 3-bedroom apartment, and it's going to stay that way. It's not going to be a retail use. And that means 2.5 spaces for a 2-bedroom. And then your bylaw specifically, or rules specifically call for an additional half bath to the extent you add a bedroom. So we just automatically go to 3 spaces for that particular use. Now, if we go back and we actually go to the back building, which is the old auto repairs / car dealership building, I just go through those uses as well. So unit 1 is the existing car dealership. There's no real category. How many spaces do you need? Who knows? I mean, how many spaces, how many cars do you have? So this license would allow 13 cars, 3 of which you may need to keep inside at all times. So that's why I show car dealership 10 outside, 3 inside. So the parking requirement is 10. Parking spaces provided, I'll go through that later. Then when we talk about an anonymous brewery. So the brewery is, for lack of a better term, right, a place of assembly. You come in and that's, your requirements are even higher than the norm. It's 1 space for 2 seats, and that is for consumer establishment, which this board has deemed it to be. And that would include a restaurant, or a place that serves beverages. And obviously, this is going to be a tasting room, so it's going to serve beverages. So we have 12 outdoor seats. We're going to talk about that because I know that patio component had been discussed by Mr. Moriarty's partner at the prior meeting, and I'll go through that. I just wanted for now to show you the parking table. So we have 12 outdoor seats. We really are only going to put 3 picnic tables. We can't, it's a small pad. We're not going to put 4, 3 picnic tables. They're going to be 4 seats each. So the math is basically 12 outdoor seats. The requirement is for every seat, half a parking space, so 6 spaces. Now, when we go to the inside, and I will show you the inside of the building, just so I think it's better. You can see that we have 4 cocktail tables, and then you see the stools. So for a tasting bar, it's very important that you have a bar area where people can look at the beer, decide what they want to get, and it's an informal setting, but this is a very standard tasting room setup. And then we have stools in the back yet again. So now when I go back to the parking table, I'm just going to go through it. We have 18 stools, we have 8 seats, So the total requirement for that particular area would be 13 parking spaces. When you add them up, that particular establishment requires 19. So the way it's going to work is the landlord has given them exclusive use of 12. No matter what, there'll be 12 with their name on it. Other than that, people have to come in, just like they do for every other business in here, drive around and find a space. So there'll be 8 common parking spaces that are available to everyone, and that's shown on the plan. So essentially, we're going to provide 40 spaces, and this is the method for breaking it down. I could have just said that the 8 common was extra, and that's how we provided for the total number, which would be on the site, 39. Okay, so that sums up the parking requirements, pretty succinctly, and I will deliver those to Mr. Baker. So I just wanted to show you the interior of the room. I mean, obviously, we all know it's a small area. It's about 1,400 square feet, and this is what it looks like on the inside. The exterior is going to be retained. It's not going to change. She's going to, they'll probably clean it up a bit, but the landlord isn't changing the outdoor. It's kind of that cool space. Nowadays, a lot of people with restaurants, tasting rooms love the overhead doors. The industrial look is in vogue. And it just so happens this has that already. I'm going to show you now the aerial plan, yet again, just to kind of give you that broad overview, because it didn't seem to me like there was enough of that presented. I know there was a plan that showed that existing structure, and you saw the greenhouse and all of that, but I wanted to give you the aerial that gave you a clear shot of the property itself. So here's the 60 Main Street property. For a property that basically was a car dealership, it's pretty well organized. You can see the paved areas, they're clearly delineated. And in this plan, what's beautiful about it is you can clearly see the site distance is absolutely perfect. The driveway openings, have more than sufficient site distance to see in all directions. And as shown on that plan that has been submitted, the driveways are intended to be one way. And that's the way it currently, I believe it currently works. I know that we have a comment letter from Mr. Graham relative to some of what he has concerns about relative to parking. I will say that this site plan, we're not changing that. I mean, we haven't undertaken any changes to the parking. It is what it is. It's right now. With regard to, I'm going to just switch back to this plan. With regard to that parking area that we are proposing to put in, it is parked on now in almost the same exact fashion. And in fact, you can see the cars lined up on that aerial plan right now. And it's even parked even more. They have cars in a different location as well. In the aerial, you can see how it's being used. And then a lot of cars for the automotive repair facility, as well as the dealership that parked behind the building. And you can see that use as well. So let's go back to the site plan, because this is really what we're talking about. So in essentially all of the comments that were addressed by Mr. Graham, and he's here, I'm not going to speak for him. He can speak for himself, right, Mr. Graham? His comments were make the spaces angled, so you come in at an angle, back out, and go around. Those aren't the best kind of spaces. They haven't ever needed to be that way. The parking lot's safe. That's not what the landlord, had intended. That's not what the landlord had wanted. He likes the pulling in straight because it tends to consume less area. And in the opinion of the property owner, is more than sufficient because he's never had an issue. I will note that for the most part, the parking for anonymous brewing is going to be in this big field that's going to be laid out. As I told you, he has the right for 12 exclusive. So the actual building will be broken down so that the part of the building closest to this parking field will actually be anonymous brewings. And that's where the 12 that are dedicated will be. And then the other 8, as we said, will be located around the property. So that was one of the things. Then there was another question about this. If you can see it right here, my hand is over it. It's an industrial holding tank. It is not for the brewing company, because the only thing that would need an industrial industrial holding tank is something that has vehicles coming in that have grease. And I don't mean a grease trap for restaurants, because that's totally different. And a grease trap is simply a separator that allows grease and other like milk products, solid products that actually congeal in a 4-bay, almost like a area. Then all the liquids then go into the rest of the septic system to infiltrate, and the solids remain in the grease trap basically, and then are pumped out. The brewing company has no milk solids. That's not what they generate. They have no milk solids, they have no nut butters. So there really is no requirement for a grease trap, and that's something that we'll discuss with the plumber. But that industrial holding tank, my guess is it probably is on the plan because of the possibility of having bays in the other building. So as we all know, the second you have an overhead door with the potential to drive in, you either need to install bollards to prohibit traffic from going inside a building and possibly having oil go on the ground, or you have to put in an industrial holding tank. That's what the plumbing code says. Exactly, and that's my point. And that's this thing says.
So it's an oil water separator?
Pardon?
Is this there or is this proposed?
That tank
Yes.
is proposed, it's not there,
So-
and that has nothing to do with anonymous brewing. That's my point, nothing.
So
Because that
why,
is right, Mr. Spalding, that's an industrial.
so why show it if you don't describe what it is? I just don't understand. So it's an oil water separator?
Prior engineer, yeah, the prior engineer, well, not the prior engineer, the engineer for this particular project, who's actually working with the owner, had it shown on the plan. And I mean, they even showed on the version you'd seen last week, and the version that Mr. Graham had reviewed, had the building on it is labeled as proposed building, and then parking to be relocated. But we don't know when that'll happen, we don't know if that'll happen.
Okay.
But, good questions. So site plan approval, we are changing use. We're making this, basically a tasting room. It will.
To say we're changing the use, and it's certainly been an issue with the earlier meeting and will continue to be an issue, we're adding a use, aren't we?
Well, it's taking one away, so the motor vehicle repair is being eliminated.
That would be, I think it's already.
Isn't half the building automotive repairs still?
No, that's the auto sales.
I thought the front building was auto sales.
No, the front building is just the residential. It has residential upstairs and then it's empty retail.
Okay.
The unit beside the Nano Brewery, that's the owner's. To confirm this, that's the owner's.
So there'll be no auto repair in there?
No.
No, auto sale.
How do you define auto repair?
I would think.
What was
Somebody
that
come.
last thing?
Well,
How do you define auto repair?
Well, they're not doing auto repair. I mean,
If you're selling cars and you have an open-end wrench in that bay to tighten.
Well, I think
is that auto repair?
No.
No, but I don't think that's what we're really getting. My question really is, are we adding a use? And I think we are. We're not subtracting a use, because the use that you're suggesting, auto repair, is already gone. So it doesn't exist, but we are.
Oh, I didn't realize it was already gone.
it's auto sales, not auto repair.
Yes.
So, but what we did was come to the determination that, as a matter of right, someone can use this site for consumer services business, and that was presented as basically a showroom for what they do, a way to show how they manufacture their beer, and to showcase their product, but not so much as a drinking establishment.
It's not a drinking establishment, it's a tasting room, so you go there if you wanna buy some beer, you're like, okay, it's not a bar. I mean, it's not. The application is a farmer series pouring license. So you preview your beers. So, you know, because this is what's so great about these nano breweries. Just like, I mean, this is how, you know, Sam Adams started, right? Somebody's basement, and it grew and it grew and it grew. So, you know, you have these nano beers, people come in, and what Mr. Moriarty will do is he'll develop like a seasonal ale or a pilsner or some other type of brewed beverage, and then he'll say, look, you want to try this? What do you think? And it's the intent is to sell, you know, and to distribute it at some point. I mean, that's what the brewery intent is. And he plans on brewing, you know, in those, I believe I saw and showed you like the barrels that he'll use, and there's a brewing room right here. Where's the brewing room? So he has the brewing room with the kettle in the back, and you see the 3 tanks. And then he has his cold storage for the beer. I mean, this isn't a restaurant. It's just that when you say you're going to serve beer, there's nothing in your parking table that allowed me to use any other type. So I said to Kevin, you know what, look, I'm gonna use the most burdensome form of parking because I can't find anything in the table, in the regulations, that would apply to this type of use. There's nothing there.
Well, that was sort of the problem we had in trying to consider how to handle it. We didn't know how to categorize it, and we did categorize it as something other than restaurant. And now, nonetheless, we're counting seats on the basis of as if it were a restaurant. So I don't want to get.
Because I mean, you could count it as something else, and you could count it as place of assembly because that is another element of it, you know, and that's how you do it. Like people come in, they're going to sit there, they're going to taste something, they're going to buy, they're going to be in line, they're going to want to come up to the back. Perfect example. You ever go to probably doesn't do it anymore. Today's wine, something like that. I can't remember. Like Total Wine. They have a big tasting room where you can go in. And they'll bring out, like, they'll preview new brewers, and they'll preview new vineyards and new types of wines. And you take a sip, you decide if you want it, and then you buy. That's the type of thing this will be. I mean, there's no intent to have people come in and, you know, nosh and enjoy themselves and drink. That's not what this is. It's about selling the brewed goods.
Yeah, same thing.
So no food trucks?
Pardon?
No food trucks?
Actually, only because Attorney Mann's not present.
Jill, Dan Sopansky. I live at 66 Main Street. I'm in the butter.
So we have an abutter who's just asking the question because the petition does include the idea that they may seek spot permits for food trucks. You know, how does that jive with it not being a restaurant?
Oh, it's definitely, I mean, if a food truck came in, it'd be for an event. So, for example, a lot of times what people like to do is you'll hold an event. I mean, I've seen them actually held at like different offices. So you want to preview, let's just say he wants to preview a summer ale. You can go in, taste the summer ale, maybe outside, you know, to support the summer ale, they'll have a food truck that has fried clams in it because, you know, that can go well and would taste good. But it's not a place where you're going to go in, sit down, order, and have a waitress wait on you. That is never going to happen.
And how do you accommodate for those special events, as you call them, from a parking perspective?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, we're not anticipating a huge turnout. We know what the capacity is. We know how many seats we have. And when I based it on the restaurant or, you know, beverage, I mean, there's other things that are accommodated under that particular provision of your regulations. I do one parking space per 2 seats. That's sufficient capacity for a building this size, probably over capacity.
But doesn't the fact that you bring in food trucks, that to me means you're expanding the capacity?
What I will tell you, Mr. Spansky, is that we can't approve the food trucks. We're not even approving a site for the food trucks or you know, a location where they'll park or where the cars will park once these people come. Every time he wants to get a food truck, he'd have to go to the Board of Selectmen and get a permit for that event.
Yeah, you have to do like that special 1-day permit, and then you have to demonstrate, you know, temporary parking in an area. I mean, it's a big deal to do it. So that's why I say it's not like I know places that permanently approve food trucks, right? And then it's like, it's what it is, food truck park. That's not what this is, it's an event. It would have to be something special and you'd have to get an independent license.
Well, I mean, I think that's also a possibility. I'm sorry to be talking over you, we're kind of, I mean, it also is a possibility that if we were to do a site plan approval, we could restrict food trucks on the site.
Of course.
Yeah,
I
so,
mean, the whole point here is to preview, the brewed goods. That is what the point is to try and get, to have it take off, to show the commercialization of the product and to be able to, hopefully grow. And maybe Mr. Moriarty and Anonymous Brewing is going to be, the next big nano brewery. That's the goal.
If I can ask another question, Mr. Graham made a comment about having diagonal parking spots.
I'm gonna let Mr. Graham go through his whole report if maybe that.
I was just wondering, because
Yeah.
Jill Mann said that the owner has had a lot of experience in that. I don't know if they were talking about this site, because he's only owned this site for a couple of months, so.
So, Attorney Mann, if it's okay, I'm gonna ask Mr. Graham to kind of summarize his report.
Please.
So, Mr. Graham, you available?
I'm here.
All right, very good. Do you mind telling us what your findings are?
Sure. A couple of weeks ago, I received from Kurt Baker an email along with the plan that's been put on the board here by Mrs. Mann. And it was asked really to look at this plan to see what the site could accommodate for parking. And so this is not, and I want to repeat that, this is not what I would consider a report of a full site plan review, comprehensive site plan review. What it is a review of that related only to traffic, site traffic, parking, and a few other general comments. I didn't look at anything with respect to existing or proposed grading or drainage, landscaping, screening, walkways, or some of the other features that you normally would expect to see on a site plan for your review and consideration. So I wanted to make that clear that that's what my review and report was all about. I'm kind of going backwards. I had 12 items. That was number 12. Number 11 was about that site tank. I did see it. I presumed, since it was proposed, it's not there, that it was for the byproduct of the nano brewery, which should not go into the sewer system, or the septic system rather. Septic system should be only for domestic sewage. And so I presumed that was being proposed for the byproduct. If there's not going to be any byproduct, then I think the Board of Health is not going to require an industrial wastewater holding tank or a tight tank for that. So I guess that we can leave it up to the Board of Health, but that's why it was in my report.
On page 6, there's actually the Board of Health sent a memo today that it's on page 6 of your agenda packet.
What did they say?
Basically, they noticed the proposed 2,000-gallon holding tank has been added to the plan in front of the brewery. They're asking, will this be used to collect brewery wastewater? The plan does not specify the proposed use. The health department will need additional information on how washing and sanitizing of glasses, utensils, and equipment will be handled. They'll need an update on status and future plans of the existing old well located on the property, so they have to close that well out. Will food of any type be available or served at the bar area or establishment? And then additional information on the potential use of food trucks would be needed along with parking for the type of vehicle.
So it sounds like, I'm sure the engineer's regretting leaving that tank on there because it's really not applicable to this site, right? Attorney Mann?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
mean, if for some reason the plumbing inspector and the Board of Health said, you know what, we know you're not gonna have milk solids, we know you're not gonna have food, we know you're not gonna have nut butters, we still want to have an interior grease trap, maybe we put one in where this sink is in the brewery. But I just went through this with another use and it makes no sense.
yeah, no, I think it's only because we're only talking about it because it happened to be on there.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
can you do a response where you explain that and address it that way? Address that.
Say that,
Maybe you could.
say that one more.
When you, in your written response, just explain what you just explained to the board.
Oh, sure, I mean, it's all, I still have to go through the plumbing inspector and Board of Health, but sure, I can outline that.
Yeah.
I mean, if the board were to so choose to approve the site plan, I'd simply condition it on me providing to you a letter from some sort of approval from the plumbing inspector as well as the Board of Health that, such a tank is not necessary due to the type of byproducts generated by a brewer.
All right, well, that would like to address that issue. So, Mr. Gray, you want to move forward on discussing the parking
Yeah.
and the
Yeah, I'll jump
traffic
back
flow?
up to my letter to the board of August 2nd, item number 1. There's been a nice cleanup effort on that site, I've noticed, and I think even more has happened when I passed by this morning than when I looked at it a week or two ago. So, but I am presuming that the entire parking area that's being proposed will be paved. And I'm making that presumption because it's important with respect to pavement markings for parking space lines, as well as arrows for one-way traffic, et cetera. So that presumption is made in the beginning.
Okay, let me see if I can clarify if that presumption is accurate. Attorney Mann, do we know if they're intending to repave the entire site that where they removed the pavement?
They were not planning on paving that back area because, as you know, they are still contemplating whether or not to further develop the site. So the intent is to actually have it in gravel and stone dust. And then what they'll do is it's not going to be a high use area, so you can paint these areas. You have to do it every 6 months to 8 months, and obviously after the winter time, but you can paint them.
Does it last that long?
I'm gonna say parking
I
stops,
had them
parking
last
stops
for a
would be a
long
better
time when
thought.
they're low end use. If they're used constantly, no, but for the most part, I've had them last about 6 months. I don't know, maybe it's some different type of stone dust, I don't know.
All right.
Well, then how about the rest of the parking area other than those 14 spaces in the middle?
So are you speaking, I'm gonna just show on the plan, Mr. Graham. So are you speaking of the paving, can you see I'm not sure, can you see my hand on the plan?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so they plan on paving the front areas. So in this area where it shows, within kind of like that shaded line, they're paving that because that's where there's gonna be activity. Because you're gonna have people coming in for the auto repair. I apologize for the car dealership and they'll park in these spaces. And then obviously for the home and if the retail space rents out, they would park in these areas as well.
So what numbers is the brewery's parking spaces, just so I can wrap my head around it? What spaces are theirs? You said 12, correct?
Yeah, so they have 12 dedicated so that only they can use, and those will be in the back in this not paved area.
In the area that's not gonna be used that much, you just said? But those are their 12 spaces?
They have 12 exclusive use spaces, and that'll be in this area.
Can I ask a question about spaces 27 through 40? What happens if people are parked in 27 through 33? How does everybody in the back get out? In the back row?
Right in this area will be regraded to allow people to travel. So I'm gonna go back to if you don't mind, I'm gonna go back to that aerial plan again,
Uh-huh.
and I'll show you. So because currently people are parking like that, so this isn't, this is kind of like I wish I had the street view. So this is a canopy, and you can see how the car is parked underneath. There is a travel path that would allow people to come in and out.
Can I make a suggestion? If you're not gonna pave it, could you do parking stops with some sort of sign? To kind of distinguish what the parking spaces are, because I don't see the paint lasting very long.
That makes sense. We can always put in, like right in the middle, signage.
Correct, right down the middle.
And because they're dedicated exclusive use spaces that are part of Ms. Moriarty's lease,
Right.
we absolutely have the right to put signs up saying, anonymous brewing only. So we can do that one, certainly.
So
That makes
there,
sense.
if that were the case, there wouldn't be tandem spaces. It looks right, like on the plan, it appears that you'd have to be parking in tandem, but you're saying that the cars can go around and head on park back into, towards the center?
Yeah, they can go back here.
So signage would help, I think, even with
The sign-
parking in
definitely will.
rear, with arrows, some sort of signage would clear up a lot, I think.
And we definitely can do that.
Is there enough space for two-way ingress to those back spaces? If
I mean,
cars are pulling.
I don't know, their drive aisle's only 16 on that side, so as long as they got 16 feet, it's the same. Oh yeah, in and out, correct.
It's a decent amount of room, it's just the tree canopy, and I apologize for that, I should have had some forethought about it, but when you look at the aerial, that's how people actually drive under here, you can see where the cars are, they shouldn't be parked there now, but.
But Kirk has a good
That's how-
point, somebody coming, somebody going, is there 30 feet there? 24 feet there? It's just gotta be established way, so.
Yeah, I think the problem with
So
the problem
you can
with,
see that the tree buffer, the building setback line is 35 feet, so it appears that from the building setback line to the first parking space is probably, well, that's 35 feet, probably, it is 30, it's a little more than 35 feet from the side of you.
I think the problem with this plan is it still requires the board to imagine how that ingress and egress will happen. It doesn't really even look from the plan that you can actually drive a car back around and get behind 34 to 40. And then also there's a space between the building that the Nano Brewery is going in and the spaces. Can people go in and out of that space? It's not really clear from just looking at the plan that how traffic flow would work. And that's what the board was kind of asking for this rendition of the plan, was that it, not only the parking be clear, but the traffic flow.
Right.
So that's something that probably needs to be more clarified in order to make use of those spaces. As well as maybe putting on there, information about the signage that, that it would be dedicated to the Nano Brewery. And then also the information about there being wheel stops, that would delineate the spaces.
Wheel stops in the
So that-
27 through 40, or
Yeah, I mean, how would you otherwise delineate the spaces on 27 through 40?
Well, yeah,
we just talked about doing, we'll paint them, but we'll do it with signage. That's what Mr. Spalding had said.
Oh, just with signage?
I mean, I recommended parking stops,
Yeah.
but
Oh, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I think the signage, or I don't know if you can,
I mean, parking stops, meaning those curbs that
Right.
would create the center, both cars, you park head on into them from front and back.
yeah.
Yeah, they're like square cement blocks that are.
long rectangles with a beveled edge,
That you kind of
parking
use the
stops.
rebar and pound them in, right?
Yes, concrete parking stops.
I mean, okay, good, so now we know what we're all talking about. I think it makes sense to create that parking area, to have that, so that there's no,
Otherwise,
so that it's
there's
clearly
something-
delineated.
If they're not
I
somehow
think
delineated.
back to the fact, was this submitted as a complete comprehensive site plan? I think this is getting to the point.
Well, see, this is kind of the complicated thing, right? Is that this one user isn't really able to control the entire site. So it's typically typical of a site plan when you're coming in is to demonstrate that there's sufficient parking for the proposed new site, because as it sits and as it exists, the site has been deemed to be acceptable and safe because it has been approved and used and has occupancy permits for the various uses. So when you add your new use, you need to demonstrate that it retains that quality, right? And that it has sufficient parking. It's
So
unreasonable.
Jill, I would argue
Yeah.
that the gravel parking lot's not sufficient. Give them 12 spaces in the paved area and you wouldn't have a problem. It's using a gravel parking lot that has no spaces, no signage, no anything on it is the issue.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, Ken, we could take the 12 parking spaces anywhere we wanted.
Correct.
But you'd have
If
to
not,
delineate.
if that were to make the board happy, I think that I probably can take 12 parking spaces in front. And then the 10 can be, somewhere else. Because because quite frankly, that's not a bad plan either. I just put them there because that's what I thought. But if you think about it, right, the Nano Brewery could take, it needs 10 spaces, it's exclusive. We won't take the handicap, but let's assume we take 10 here. So we take these 7 across the back, we take 1 through 3. And then basically we get 8 elsewhere. Here in the field that you're talking about, Mr. Spalding,
Yes.
that can be for the car dealership, because quite frankly, those cars park, they stay, people look, they don't move, they're up for sale. So I think that it would be more than fair to have the owner label 8 through 15 and 1 through 3 as out, or even 1 through 5 as Mr. Moriarty's exclusive use spaces. Because then they still have sufficient parking on the other side for that retail unit, and on the other side for
The apartments.
residential, thank you. They couldn't find that word, that's not a good sign.
Take 5
So I mean, we could actually
Just say
condition
handicapped spaces.
an approval on
in the
absolutely
Infiltration
taking
too.
those front spaces, that's not a problem.
The other thing though is that, the auto sales is grandfathered in, so the parking, that's in the front setback is grandfathered. So in a way, all the parking that's within that front setback area, they can keep that because for the auto sales, so that makes sense. But then if we move this parking or use any of that for the parking for the Nano Brewery, we're essentially approving parking within the front setback.
Right, but that's not how the non-conforming statute works. The non-conforming statute simply looks to the basic element of the use and not to the individual user. So I don't know that would prohibit the continued use of the parking, because that's what grandfathering is.
I mean,
Because you're not changing it, parking, probably less burdensome, because it will be empty many hours of the day versus with a car dealership when they'll be full all the time.
I mean, the back spaces make more sense for a car dealership, and I agree with that.
You're 100% right, Mr. Spalding. I thought that was going to be a place to put them. The owner never specified. Mr. Moriarty can make the choice, which is why we have no problem putting them up in the front area. And honestly, I think you're right. I think it makes 100% more sense.
Excuse me, as the owner, I'm pretty
Just a
flexible.
question about the patio, don't you have to get to the patio by going through the front door of the brewery?
Say that one more time, Mr. Graham, I apologize.
You get to the patio, don't you access the patio from inside of the brewery?
Yep.
Okay, so what you need to do, because of human nature, is get the parking spaces closest to the front door of the brewery, whether it's the brewery inside or the patio outside.
You would never want to give them direct access physically to outside concrete,
Right.
because ABCC will require that you have to have internal access, and then it has to be gated, it can be accessible from the outside. So we don't want parking near that pad. We would have to protect against it. But ideally,
It goes back to the point of trying to get the parking for the Nano Brewery somewhere in that southerly front front area and leave those back spaces, which are awkward at best, for the car, used car, or whatever else is going on there.
Yeah, I think honestly, I like the suggestion. I mean, I've adopted it as my own. Thank you, Mr. Spalding. Yeah, I think it's great. We use the front 12. Those will be our, those will be Mr. Moriarty's exclusive use areas. Perfect.
The owner here has a comment, so I'm gonna let her speak.
Oh, the owner's there, okay,
Yes.
great.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I actually prefer the space in the back just because I feel like the cars, will be sort of closest to us and not sit on the street. So, I mean, I initially wanted back there, but I was perfectly flexible with the brewery wanted us to do because we needed the site plan to work for them, but I definitely prefer that, and that would be great for us. So I have no objection against
With
that.
moving the auto sales parking to the back.
Yeah, the back.
Okay, one other thing that I thought, I don't need to be a lead blanket on this, but it was a recent renewal of your auto sales
That's right.
license, and along with that was a plan that actually showed parking in the front, so I'm not really trying, but it's gonna get critiqued.
I have a copy of the license right here, and it says 13 car limit, all 13 vehicles must be parked in the area shown on the attached ZBA approved site plan, which I don't have.
And that's what I'm talking about, it's.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Oh, that's it,
Oh, that says that, okay.
All right, so,
that's actually in the packet,
yeah.
if you guys look at page 5.
And the 13 spots, Jill, seem to be on the left side of the building and even behind the wait a second. Proposed building. Fernald's garage.
It's right here, this is the original approval from 1995.
Yeah, the proposed building you see on this one is the building we're talking about.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Because this was from an earlier plan back in, yeah.
He's got it right there.
Do you want to see it? Oh, you got it?
Oh, yeah, we got this one.
So the license does appear to be limited to the 13 spots identified on this plan, and yet there are 17 spots identified,
And it's not including all the ones either.
and it's not including all the ones that they otherwise could use closer to the roadway.
So,
So where,
can,
is it possible for Kirk to share, Kirk, is it possible for you to share your screen and show me that?
Yeah, let's actually, can I take the screen back right quick?
sure.
If you don't mind?
Probably
Give it back.
10, 9, 8,
That's fine.
2, and
Yeah, no,
3.
I'm fine, or maybe I can,
And it's
Did you grab
excluding
it?
all these ones.
hold on one second, let me
So they
look
have all
for
these,
the plan, I
all
might
these.
send it to you, or the agenda packet, I'll
Just
send it
approval last
to
week, and it
you
really
by
is keeping it here and behind the building.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
3,
Oh,
4,
there,
5,
no,
I
it's
mean,
not
the parking spot starts behind the building.
I know.
So it's these ones, which are really the two handicapped, and then it's these ones on that side, which are like 13, 14, 15,
Right over here.
maybe 12.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, they have to go back to the ZBA, and you should be here.
Does your parking lot have a designated traffic flow? Do we enter on the left side of the building and keep the traffic moving out the right?
Yeah, so. goes
Yeah,
around the
so it
building.
comes in, you can see that it, oh, I don't have my screen share anymore, but yes, you come in that left side and you come around the building and leave. So it does have a pattern, I guess it's clockwise.
Is it possible that would be able to create some signage so that that's more evident to anybody coming off of Main Street?
Yeah, I don't see why, I mean, the signs would be easy to do, and it makes sense, because we will paint, we will have
Sure,
painted,
painted as well.
arrow, and the signage in front is, for lack of a better term, short money and good traffic control.
So do I understand right, though, that the area that's been disturbed and pulled up, that portion will be repaved directly around the two buildings, but not the portion to the rear. Am I right?
I'm correct, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Hey Jill, do you see, see my,
So, yeah, on that site plan, it's shown like there's a very dark line that comes across and forms a rectangle.
Yeah.
And that inside that area, yes.
Okay, so, I mean,
Those, they're not counting those spaces. The numbered spaces are the ones they're counting, correct?
Yes, correct.
I mean, I would, again, I want to hear from Mr. Graham some more on it, but I would prefer that the dedicated parking to the brewery be shown on the paved, be taken out of the paved area. So that would, yeah, and I know that that's what everyone's agreeing to until we ran into this, this car license issue. I think they might have to get that amended.
Well, let me ask you this. So there are 11 spaces on the other side of the building that we can make dedicated.
But we can't, I can't amend the ZBA.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
Where are those, like, where are those dedicated spaces for the car dealership?
Unfortunately,
Yeah, I don't
they're
know.
shown on a plan that hasn't been updated in 25 years. So they're really not even on the ground.
I thought Kirk had a plan
Well,
that
that's why,
showed
can you
where
not-
they were referencing them.
can you not see it on the screen?
That's not 15 spaces.
I don't see your screen, nope.
Oh, I'm sorry, that probably has to do with the city.
Yeah, you have to share,
I thought I was sharing, but I think once.
You were being very generous, Mr. Baker, huh?
I think once,
There we
yeah,
go.
once you gave it back, it didn't automatically reset. So.
Okay, now I can see. All right, so here we go. Here's Main Street. Holy cow, what the heck are they saying? So here's Main Street. I'm trying to see it. So, oh, that's interesting. They're out back. They're behind the building.
Well, some of them are. It's 1 through 13, I believe.
Yeah, this is the.
That's not, can you read that? So, so that's 1, 2, 3,
10 through 17.
8 in the back, right?
Yeah.
And then I wonder, are the used cars supposed to be in that rectangle in front?
It's not,
Yeah, and
it's
the
not
two-
13 spaces though.
The used cars are in the front. That's the designated space, and I
It's
think
not 13 spaces.
that was
I
like.
know.
I mean, the original plan.
That was the
this-
original plan.
But the used cars, that's actually overwritten the original plan, I think, in order to display the cars for the auto sales. Is that?
I guess so then, the issue would be that the spaces, I don't know, I can look at mine at the same time I look at yours. So the issue would be, I'm looking at the plan that I had given to you at the same exact time I'm looking at yours. So if I look behind, I can see directly behind the building that there are spaces here behind the building and then on the side. But the spaces on the side, oh, this is interesting. The spaces on the side, they're not all of them. So essentially, it looks to me like the line, that line that goes across, that dotted line on my plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a second.
There's no, it
represents-
looks,
I'm trying to match it.
it seems like there's no parking in front of that dotted line.
But that's where all the used
Yeah.
cars are.
Because they're all, it seems like they wanted no used cars in the front setback. Because spaces 1 through 13 are all in the rear.
Right, so that maybe that's the key. Maybe,
And maybe that's the reason why they would, yeah, they would allow you to move the used cars to the rear.
But it says used cars up front.
Yeah, but that's the original plan.
What we need to do
It's
is
not
to
13 spaces, I
revise
don't
Right.
this
understand.
plan to mirror what they have with those 8 spaces, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces in the rear of the site plan, behind the building. That's where the used cars would be, at least 8 of them. And then there needs to be 5 more spaces, but 3 of those spaces are inside. So all we really need are 2 more car spaces. And you don't have to park them outside, you just can't park them anywhere else. So if that's the case, we can give them 2 of the spaces
not clear.
where the ZBA approved it and not use the others for the car dealership.
And what,
They can't,
Jill, one thing, we're, you have spaces 10 through 17, but for this site plan, the 100%, parking conflict with the septic system in the 100% reserve area?
well, you can park over the septic, that's not a problem.
Not
Well,
I don't
septic,
know.
not a
No,
good
it's a
idea.
raised.
not that raised field, you can't.
Okay, so we still have space behind the building where those spaces are. If you look at them, it's in between,
On the concrete
you
pad,
know.
where your
How close
patios
is,
would be.
yeah, how close is
Maybe the
the,
concrete pad can't be, maybe the concrete pad can't be there.
well, I think that's an existing concrete pad as well. I mean, at the same time, it's supposed to be parking.
I think they need to go clean this up.
I don't see it when I look at but I can't tell. When I look at the aerial, I see I think I see a concrete pad, but it looks like, if you want me to share my screen again, I can. That concrete pad looks like it's actually a grade.
There's a well back there too, you gotta avoid.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, that's what the health
Oh,
department, yeah,
right there.
unless you intend to abandon it. Okay, I'm sharing.
I see the well. So when I see, this pad, if you look, I think you see it, I think that's the pad where you have a car parked on it, right there. I think that's it, so it's that grade. Yeah, it's definitely at grade.
Well, it seems to me like the ZBA plan that was incorporated into the car license specifically places the cars in inventory on the 13 spots that are on the ZBA approved plan, which are all behind the setback.
It looks like they're here, there's 8 of them here,
Yeah,
right, Pete?
but
Oh,
I mean,
boy.
I mean, the thing is, if you want us, if we were to keep moving forward with our review, it sounds like you're gonna have conflicting orders, because we could allow you to use those spaces for the Nano Brewery up front, but the ZBA could want you using them for car sales.
Right, but the issue would be, they can't tell you, you have to use them for car sales. I think their permit, I'd have to look at it, so I can't really opine, but my guess is it says that that's the only place you can
Well,
park them.
it says all 13 vehicles must be parked in the area shown on the attached ZBA approved site plan.
Right, so which, I can't tell, it's back here, those 8, and then in front, it looked to me like they were talking about here
Yeah, but it's not
and
enough
here,
space.
which makes very little sense, but that's what it looked like to me.
No, it's behind those areas. Those areas were not to be parked in the way I was looking at it.
That's the
Okay,
way I looked at it, if you count them up, there's not 13 there anyways.
There's actually 12.
Yeah, but
They're
that's not what
definitely
that's.
talking 8 back here,
Oh,
and they show a weird area.
It
So
shows
even
all the
if
way
it's
behind the building.
yeah.
8. So we have 8 here, so if you have 8, and then they say you can't park outside that area, you can't park outside of this setback, then all they need, they're reducing their outdoor parking by 3 cars. They're gonna put
6, 7,
3
8.
inside, they only need 2 more. So
Oh, it is.
effectively,
It's
they can take these 2 spaces here
These are
for the
ones
car
I'm talking about.
dealership, and then the rest can be for the Nano Brew, because it can be in front. So we would
Yeah.
still have,
All
these
of
5,
all
and then
these, yeah.
these 5 would make
So that's
10.
1, 2, 3,
I wouldn't want to take the handicap,
6,
I really
7,
wouldn't.
8,
So I'd probably want to go on the
9,
other side to grab the other 4.
11, 12, 13. All of them. That's what you're seeing.
So I think Troy's nailed it. Troy's pretty much got it put on the ground
And
for
1
us.
and 2 on your plan don't exist.
Oh, you have it, Troy?
No, I mean, just looking at the hashed out marks on the ZBA plan, you can tell, I just counted out the spaces, it's 13 spaces in that bold black line.
Oh, can you share again so I can see it?
Mr. Chairman, to save everybody a little bit of time, you may want to review the narrative on the original ZBA approval, because I think there was a component in there about the number of cars for sale, as well
There
as
you
the
go,
number
if you
of cars
share, I
that
can see her.
can be parked there for repair.
Let's see, you don't.
I did look at the
Let's see,
earlier order. That wasn't what jumped out at me as,
You'll have to look at, I think you look at it on the screen, can you see?
Here we go. So, Mr. Spalding, can you say what you said one more time?
So if you look at the bold areas on the ZBA plan, and you compare it to your newer plan, there is 13 spaces counted out in those bold areas. So 1 and 2 on your plan don't exist, but, where's the other one? 1 and 2 don't exist, but 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are in the bold area next to the building, and then 8 through 15, so that's your 13 spaces. So it is in that bold area is where they're holding them, where it says used cars.
Right, where it shows and it's in that area, okay.
so basically facing the residential building to the entrance to the left on both sides of the
Drive aisle.
the drive aisle is where the used cars are to go. And
Yeah.
I think that's what you're stuck with, so as much as we all thought we'd like to put the parking for the brewery there, that seems to be where the used cars need to be,
Unless you get it changed.
unless you get it changed.
Well, what about those 8 behind? You think all the used ones, that's Troy's point, you think all 13 go in those 2 little discrete boxes?
That's exactly what it says. When reading it, I think so.
Yeah, I didn't know what, because I'm trying to read what it says behind the building and I cannot read it.
So, Larry, if we were to ask this applicant to provide us a full site plan review for a full engineered site plan for your review, what would we be looking at differently? Stormwater, and yet they're not creating any more impervious surface or rooftop. So what do we, if we were to allow them to, if we were to approve this on the basis of what they're submitting, is there anything we'd be overlooking or should be looking at?
Well, I don't know if you want me to go through the rest of my report. I think it's important.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, item 2, or comment 2 was I was just agreeing on the clockwise one-way traffic. I think that's most appropriate for the site. And you've already touched on the need for additional signing at both entrance and exit movements, and particularly stop signs at the exit. The proposed paint markings, I think, should be increased. They're showing 3 there. I think that should be doubled. And then number 5 comment, I strongly recommend that this should be angle parking, as Mrs. Mann started out talking about. And the reason is that you only have an aisle width of about as narrow as 14 feet shown, but generally 14 to 16 feet. If you look at any parking standards, you'll see that for 90-degree parking, as shown on the site plan, minimum is usually 22 and up to 24, or maybe even more. So for head-in parking, 90-degree parking, their aisle width is substandard. But for one-way angled parking, it's right on at 16 feet or so. And the other thing an angle parking does for you is obvious, is that when you back out, you're backing out with your front of your car headed in the direction to exit the site. So if your signage and the traffic that comes in and out gets used to accessing the site, they'll come in where they're supposed to, and if they forget where they're supposed to go out, when they back their car out of the angled space, it'll be the first clue. So, that's why I'm recommending the 60-degree angle parking, because the aisle width as well as the traffic flow, for the one-way. And that's item number 5. Comment number 6 is, and I don't think it's important to go back to the site plan right now, but there's, at spaces 5 and 6 on the site plan that they submitted, they go straight through from spaces 1 through 4. They put a little angle point there. They can increase that 14-foot aisle width in the back. It seems like the plan has sort of been developed around an existing fence. I don't think that the parking should be developed around that. You should develop the parking, it's important, the aisle width, and then move the fence as you need to. The plan calls for some wood guardrail along parking spaces 24 to 26. That's not recommended in my opinion. That's an obstacle to somebody opening the door. Plan also calls for wood guardrail all around the head-in parking spaces, 1 through 7, 16 through 23. And I don't think that is the most appropriate choice either for a stop, if you will, for a car. I think bollards or wheel stops is more appropriate than, or even Cape Cod berm or crushed stone shoulder. Something other than a wood guardrail right at the head end of the space. We've already talked about comment 9 about how people get in and out of spaces 34 to 40. I don't know after the discussion tonight who's going to be using those spaces, but I think it would be great if the Brewery can use the spaces closer to their front door that will be paved and used the most, and if those spaces in the back can be used for the car sales or vehicles that are more stationary than those that are moving all the time, that would be preferred. There's 2 handicap spaces shown on the site plan. They're right together. They're the appropriate number of spaces for 40. But I don't know that they both need to be where they are. For the, perhaps one should be closer to the retail store and on the northerly side of the site. And it depends on where the access is going to be and whether it is going to be accessible access to the retail store and the Brewery or building number 3. So I think more thought needs to be put into where those parking spaces are and what buildings they'll serve and what the route is from those parking spaces to the buildings with accessible doorways. And that's item number 10, comment 10, and we've already talked about 11 and 12. And again, I'll repeat that I didn't review this in its entirety. I don't think it is have every feature that a site plan that the board normally requires from other applicants. I don't think this plan fills the bill yet. Certainly, and it does certainly shows in the head-in parking, and I'm strongly recommending that to be one-way angle parking. I like the one-way idea, but the angle parking fails it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the summary. I think, and I'm sorry for asking kind of a convoluted question, but there's no reason for us to look at the stormwater on this site, am I right?
Well,
based on the proposed, based on what they're proposing, I mean, where they're not proposing any new.
No, I understand where you're going with that because they're not proposing any additional impervious surfaces unless building number 3 is built, I guess. And at that time, you could take it up there. But there is a provision in the stormwater management standards that says for a redevelopment of a site, you should try to improve upon it. And there's several catch basins here. I don't know where they go. Maybe they're leaching catch basins, but I think it should be known what they are. Some of them are positioned in plenty places for, the traffic movement and parking spaces. So, I think at the minimum, there should be some more information on what's there for stormwater and how it has and will function in the past and how it could possibly be improved. The other items would be landscaping, which you normally look at, screening, and as I've mentioned, pedestrian paths, walkways, particularly from handicapped spaces, to the retail. I don't know that there's really a need for any walkway considerations anywhere else on the site. It's not a high traffic area and everybody's gonna be walking on the pavement to get to the front door of the Nano Brewery.
All right, well, Attorney Mann, if we were to, it does seem like the angled parking really would solve a lot of the traffic flow issues there and would certainly keep people heading in the right direction, keep people from reversing course coming onto oncoming cars. Is it something that the applicant would, where they're already in the process of repaving, then relining seems like a simple extra
So
step.
this is all something we need to ask the owner. I mean, again, this is a use, so usually the trigger is simply to look at parking. I mean, for example, looking at storm water, that's a burden you put on someone who's trying to fill a 1,400 square foot space. That doesn't even make sense. We couldn't even comply. It's all Mr. Moriarty's burden to that extent. If this were a real redevelopment, that would be different. They're simply trying to pave the area so that they can repaint the line. The site is literally not changing in the quality of impervious, and it's an old site. I doubt that it meets current standards. Maybe it does. I don't know, but it's been functioning just like this for decades.
And I wasn't suggesting that it had to meet new standards, Jill. I was
You're asking for somebody to provide all of this information, and you're putting that on a user of a tenant. So it's like, where do you draw the line? What does the real site plan approval require? Is it really simply to ensure that traffic? I get the in and out parking space element. I get the redesigning of the manner in which you set up the parking. I understand, show us where the 10 spaces are. But relative to, creating more landscaping, if it were for example, the patio area where we need to screen that use, that's one thing. But I don't know what the purpose would be of a landscaping plan for the whole property because it's a tenant. And
well, okay, I understand where you're going with that. It is a requirement of site plan review. So the board must decide. In this particular case, is this a site plan for the 1 acre site or is this a site plan for one building?
it's a site plan for one unit in one building only.
Okay, one use in one building.
Yeah.
There's no exterior improvements being made.
Right.
It's other than the place that the park that would support the site, or support the use.
I think we need a better definition on parking and how this doesn't cut it.
Okay, so, Attorney Mann, I think you've made your point, and perhaps we shouldn't be looking at landscaping and even stormwater management where there's no redevelopment going on the site. But I do think we, are certainly within our jurisdiction to ask you to give us a plan that shows us the dedicated parking to this use, and otherwise dedicates or distributes the balance of the parking over the balance of the uses on the site.
Signage and all that.
I mean, because we honestly had no idea. Kevin didn't even know about the other plans for the ZBA and for licensing. We had no clue until
Right.
you just showed it to us. We didn't know.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're looking at stuff that was decided in 1991, some of it is.
Some of us weren't born. I might have been.
I'm pretty sure I saw your name on that petition.
Hey, it's possible. I understand, and I understand.
So, with that said, and I know we've gone over a lot of ground here, I do want to ask The neighbors, who's here from the, aside from, we've had one person comment, is there anybody else that has some comments they'd like to make? Sure. You would-
Did you receive the?
If you wouldn't mind, just give us your name and
I'm
where you live.
sorry, Audrey Williams from Heritage Way,
Okay,
and, Bill Sheehan
yeah,
sent, okay,
that's where I got a fair amount of what we're talking about tonight,
okay.
okay? Bill Sheehan, who's the trustee of a condominium association that sits across the street from this site, provided a comment letter from the Board of Trustees, and he did raise some of these issues and also brought our attention to the 91 decision. And so there's some people from here from the board, or pardon me, from the condo that want to make sure that was seen.
Oh, so they're directly across, they're just gonna take the peak where?
Yeah, so it's the new condominium, well, it's not new, it's certainly showing up on there, it's called Heritage Way.
Is it like the new, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units? Or is it that subdivision that goes in the back?
Subdivision,
Okay, I don't see the whole thing, but I see it in there's like duplexes, am I correct?
right,
Uh-huh. So it's located kind of, its driveway is off of Main Street?
it
It
is.
goes on, okay,
Yeah,
just wanted to get my,
across the main street, just to the north of this, just slightly.
yep, I see it now, I see it.
So, and yet, you know, Attorney Sheehan does bring our attention to this 91 case, but the lot's changed a lot since then. In 91, it was 11 acres, and the majority of the site was used for boat storage. So, a lot of
I
this,
can still see that on that aerial plan, Mr.
Yeah.
Thornton, did you notice it?
yeah, no, Curly's got to put his boat somewhere, and that's where they went.
Yeah, there's still, okay, I got you.
All right, so, so you mentioned Mr. Sheehan's letter, we did receive it. You know, aside from the comments he raised in there, he did raise issues about noise and potentially, even, I think he even mentioned odor and the like, all things that are pretty well mitigated, given that it's mostly an inside facility and there's very little manufacturing on site with only, you know, natural, from what I understand, it's just, water, hops, and just the ingredients in beer, yeah.
So, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
I believe the applicant in the last meeting said that he anticipates being open Wednesday through Sunday, 5 to 9. So that sounds, reasonable. Where do the abutters go when he becomes widely successful and he's now open from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m.? At that point, because you're making a decision at a point in time, and things change. We saw that with Tim. There were 75 cars there. It was never enforced. You leave it upon, and I don't mean to point to you specifically, but it's left to the abutters to police these types of issues. And it's very easy for you guys to hear the arguments, but we're the ones that live with it. And especially when you're talking about alcohol. I know it's just a tasting room, but things change. We saw it change. I've seen it change for 35 years. And that's my concern.
Well, I mean,
And if you're talking about, we're showing seating, and parking, but do you really have control over how many people will show up? If all of a sudden someone calls and next thing you know, they're parking on Heritage Way because there isn't enough parking there. We show some tables, but if there's people standing by the tables, are you gonna ask them to leave because you don't have seats?
well,
So.
I mean, you're raising all obviously good points, and all those things are beyond the planning board's ability to enforce, because we're not an enforcement board. Once, to your point, once they leave here, what happens is, is up to fate, But things like, I mean, we are setting an occupancy limit. If they exceed it, then the fire department would be interested to know that. The building inspector does have some enforcement capacity. But more to the point, what they're asking for, they're entitled to as a matter of right, as a consumer services business. So we really aren't in a position to deny them this use. We are in a position to try to craft a way for them to do this that's consistent with what the town, with public safety and the abutting the neighbors.
When we call this a consumer services.
Yeah.
Right, What is the service? It's a party.
Well, we have had this conversation and we did, have a hearing on it at the last meeting. The applicant presented to us, a plan where this would be more of a showing room than anything, okay? He has a product that he manufactures 90% off-site, and this is just to sample and show his clients. That's how it was presented to us. And under that basis, we said, okay, well, if we look at the different uses and then this falls into that category. And, but I'm concerned as we expand this review that more people, we're looking at more people and food trucks and music. We're not necessarily talking about those things, but I can see why those are the concerns, and I guess we gotta make sure we put a lid on that happening.
But if
So
you spend the
through,
money to have
we
an
have the
event-
ability to limit hours, we have the ability to limit lighting, noise, and deal with parking, okay? So that's all we can, but we can limit their hours of operation so that you're not, dealing with people coming out of a drinking establishment at 10 o'clock at night or later, and there shouldn't be any music outside, and the lighting should be, minimal necessary for safety.
And I just think if you invest in an event, you're investing in an event to draw people, and you're not trying to draw in 10 people, you're trying to draw in a crowd.
Right.
And you're talking about an event with a food truck, so that's the whole plan behind it.
But I have that concern too. I think everyone would want, worry about a festival that would attract 200 people to that site. It'd be a difficult situation, but I think they're gonna have a difficult time getting their first food truck permit, to be honest with you. And this board doesn't make that determination. The Board of Selectmen would, but for the same reason you're concerned, I think they'd be concerned. There's not enough room to bring in, lots of parking cars and lots of vendors.
And there's no desire to bring in other vendors. The purpose of it is, if there was a food truck, it would be an event to showcase the brewery and the beer. There would never be a 200-person event, ever. I mean, you couldn't do it on this site. And you still have to get permits. This is very, very limited. It is to allow up to 40 maximum people in a building at one time. And if that ever happens, it'll be a lot of people, because that's not what's anticipated. It is a nano brewery. He is trying to just commercialize his beers, and this is how you do it.
Hey, Jill, the one thing about, like, when you mentioned food trucks, like, if a food truck were to come and serve food, it would be on the outside of the building, so you'd be drawing people from inside who are consuming beer and may have beer in their hands. Have a beer in their hands and go purchase it. Well, the thing is like, well, how do we control? We have to consider how to control for that. Like, if somebody gets food at a food truck, are they required to go back in, or can they congregate outside at the food truck? I think that's what people are concerned about.
This permit has nothing to do. I know somebody mentioned food trucks, so it must have been at the last meeting. Brian.
It was on Jill, it was on Kevin's original proposal mentioned food truck, that's why food truck came up, he is the one that mentioned it.
Okay, so, no, the food truck can't go here, there's nothing on the plan, the liquor license doesn't entail that. The way it works for these farmer series pouring licenses, you have to be within the four corners, you have to be controlled, no one can leave the premises with a beer in hand. So if there are food trucks, right, that couldn't happen. You'd have to get it, they do this a lot in Salem to stimulate, consumer demand. But you have to go to the select board, you've gotta get your 1-day permit, you've gotta show controls, you have to show control of the site. It's a huge deal.
And you need an insurance policy for a day.
Pardon?
You also need a spot insurance policy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
It's a special insurance policy for an event.
Yeah.
And that's why, I mean, this is so far out of the realm of what is ever probably gonna happen on this site. This site, I can't imagine it happening. And I can't imagine the select people in this town allowing it. So if we just stick to the four corners of really what's been asked, and I understand that Mr. Moriarty may have, thrown in the kitchen sink and he just didn't realize. He's just saying, oh, eventually, you get excited, it's your own permit, and that's what's so hard about representing yourself.
Yeah.
So what I'm telling you is, we are limiting it. We will have 40 seats. We're going to have predominantly brew tasting so that we can get interest. We're gonna have specialty beers and we want people to taste. Some of it sometimes is to see if people like it. So we wanna do that. That's the purpose. We're going to, I think we're gonna end up restriping a lot, like you guys want with the angle versus head-on. We're gonna add some more control relative to how you drive the site. Because that makes sense, you're just trying to make it more user-friendly. This isn't the overburden on a tenant. And we're gonna do that, and we're gonna show, because I didn't know it, I'm gonna show the areas that are otherwise encumbered by the, license for the car dealership. And we are gonna take away 3 outdoor spaces because they only are gonna use 10 outside. Once they took away that, other part of the facility, they were reducing the scope, keeping 3 inside. So we can, if we have to, we can even go back to the board and say, we're gonna do 3 inside, 10 out. But my understanding with those types of uses, you can always reduce, you just can't increase.
And if you are gonna go back to the ZBA, you might wanna ask them to put the parking all behind so you can use dedicated
Well,
spot.
we are going back to the ZBA.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that we're going to, if they need to go back to the license board, that would be up to the landlord to do. We have no control, that wouldn't be us. I need to still see the plan and I need to see the license because to reduce, we shouldn't have to go back to the ZBA. To take away those limited spaces, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And when I did the plan, I see where you have them, like I overlaid it on my site plan, so now I can see them. So we're gonna go through and we're gonna do what we have to do to make sure we maintain that. But there really are only 10 spaces now.
Is there any commercial signage that the applicant wants to install?
I would assume there's gonna be one right on the, front door, like one of those small signs, but nothing material, I don't believe.
Okay, so no signage out on the roadway, nothing directing
He
people?
mentioned
Sandwich.
I know,
Sandwich
no,
board.
I mean, that's not the intent here, is to drive, not to drive retail, it's more of a destination, about
Okay.
Brewery becoming.
Let's just want to make sure if there was something, we were looking at it. All right.
Pardon?
I just wanted to make sure if there was something that we were looking at it.
Yeah, no street sign.
Okay. Well, based on the comments from Mr. Graham and the fact that you said you're going to take another look at some of these things, should we just, would you like the board to consider a continuance until we can have a final look at what you have?
Yeah, and I think it's, I think that we don't have a choice. So I do want to continue. I don't want to, I think this is a fantastic use. Yeah, let's continue.
I make a motion to continue to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, so the motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. So,
When are we continuing to?
Wednesday, September 8th.
September 8th, okay.
Yes.
I'm deaf as a doorknob.
okay. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming in and giving us your comments, and Attorney Mann, and we'll take, we'll look forward to seeing what those revisions are. I think if you incorporate the changes we've discussed, we're certainly getting closer to something.
Oh, I can assure you, you're gonna have a perfect plan at the next meeting. How's that?
Very great. And if you wouldn't mind just putting in writing what the hours of operation. Is there anything else that we should be thinking about? I mean,
There is in the,
if the applicant is determined to use that outdoor seating, I mean, I think we need to understand a little bit more about what use limitations we put on that.
he actually had a new proposal for that section here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no live entertainment. We're not going for that permit. We're not doing it.
Okay.
If it would be it's just because of COVID and
Yeah.
people don't want to sit indoors in tight spaces. So it's more of sort of reaction to the current situation. I would prefer them to have it than to have to go back and get it permitted under one of those emergency scenarios.
Yeah.
I just don't know what's going on, that's all. But no, there'd be absolutely no outdoor entertainment, none, no music.
Okay.
And by the it's buggy, so it's only going to be during the day. There's going to be no evening use of that.
How about any lighting on the exterior of the building or the parking area?
No, just to the front where it already is lighted to
Okay.
provide good access. And then there's a couple of building mounted, but nothing other than that. No intent to add more, none.
Okay.
Essentially, the patio, what he's proposing now in terms of the patio use would be 3 picnic tables with 4 seats at each table.
Yeah, about that, yep. Yeah, I mean, it would be less or not more, that's for sure.
Is that available?
Well, the patio-
to the public? That document?
I'm sorry, what, would you go ahead and repeat that?
I was just wondering if the patio would be fenced, and just have an exit gate?
It has to be secured, so you have to do it so that you just don't have free walking. They allow you to do it with certain place bollards, they allow you to do it with plantings. It's an ABCC requirement, so it won't be open. I don't think it would be fenced, but it would not be open, it would be controlled.
Well, so if that's, I mean, then I guess if they are gonna try to, you know, have access to that space, they ought to show those plantings and whatever the surroundings are gonna be for the pad.
Yeah, I understand, you wanna see the control.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the ABCC is gonna wanna see the control through Mr. Thornton, so that's how it is.
You know, I'm gonna ask one more question to the audience, but we really closed this hearing, so if you don't mind,
It's just John Title, 52 Main Street,
thank you.
and we're talking about the patio, and that's where my property is.
Okay, well then, yes.
And it's just a fence, and right now the property line's off, about like 3 or 4 feet. I just wanna correct the property line, but it's not a huge issue. It's just
Okay.
something I can deal with.
How do you feel about the use of that patio once that property line were properly established?
I'm the easy one, as long as they
Quiet, clean,
quiet, clean, and.
yeah, okay. As far as the lot line, we're gonna be looking at the lot line they show us on the
Yeah,
plan, we don't survey the land.
No, I know, but I still have my septic plan,
Okay,
and I know they got theirs now, so and it's been staked out. It's just when Tim's stuff was all there, it's like 4 feet off.
okay,
So I just figured this is the time.
all right,
And I
well,
talked to Bob, the owner, so
good, I think that's important, neighbors talking to each other is.
it's not a big deal, it's just,
All right, and again, because we closed this hearing, please come back next week and, you know, our next hearing, we'll have more discussion on that outdoor seating area and by the next plan we see, even though it's not there to establish a lot line, should show you the lot line between you and him a little more clearly.
and I'll bring in the.
What did I say?
You said closed.
Continue the hearing. Not yet. Well, thank you, Attorney Mann, appreciate your time.
Thank you, and I'm here also for the A&R plan, you didn't do that already, right?
No,
That's been denied.
Yeah. we like the old lot lines, sorry.
All right, sorry, okay.
That was the second item.
So now we're on to the second item of tonight's agenda.
Hang on, take it wherever you can, and when you call me, I'll just hang on.
Well, actually, I think we're there.
Well,
We gotta continue
we gotta
the
continue to the 720.
Route 1, the tree guy.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Kevin, how are you? So I'm gonna, just for the record, Member Moriarty is back, before the board. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the, continued public hearing for the site plan application submitted by Elmer, Valencia pertaining to the operation of a landscape contracting tree removal operation and open space storage of related supplies, equipment, and vehicles. For storing such items, the subject property consists of 3.87 acres located off Newburyport Turnpike, Raleigh, Massachusetts, identified as map 14, lot 22-3, and located in the BLI zoning district. Kirk?
I believe that a request to continue to September 8th.
Make a motion to continue.
Second.
Okay, so all in favor of continuing the public hearing until September, 2nd? 8th? Say aye. Aye. So the matter is continued to the 8th. And next item, I believe we have Attorney Mann on behalf of Falcon Ridge is looking for a Form A approval. And I know Kirk's looked at it, we've already kind of knew about it, but would you just give us a summary of what it is?
Absolutely. So we just have some lot line adjustments to be able to accommodate the septic systems because of the placements of the homes. So it was just lots 23, 22, and 21. Really slight adjustments, taking the line and tweaking it one way and then tweaking it the other. You can see it. So we continue to retain, the minimum lot size that we said we would in the decision, and that's it. It's just to accommodate those I guess accessory requirements such as the septic system.
No, absolutely makes sense, and I see what you're doing, and it's very, just to keep you within that 30-foot setback in every direction, huh?
Exactly, yeah, that gets you, yeah, absolutely. And just to let you know, things are going well out there. Has anybody been out to look? I think Mr. Spalding was gonna take a drive through.
I did, I drove through the other day. Looks good, spread out. Feels a lot bigger than I thought it would.
I know.
It is nice, and the approach is nice, and the way the Taylor Lane, meanders a little bit, so it's not just a straight shot. It's not that straight causeway. It looks very nice.
Yeah, it's pretty. And is the new Weathersfield intersection working out well for residents? People happy?
Some people don't like it.
Nobody likes to slow down, but
Well, nobody likes change either.
Yeah.
Stop signs, pain in the ass.
But it almost looks like it was meant to be there, so that's good.
Good, I'm glad to hear it.
All right, so Kirk, you did your review, I'm sure, and
Yeah.
nothing's changing. No frontage isn't an issue, lot size isn't an issue, access isn't an issue.
Yeah, it's just-
The roadway's approved.
There's no change to frontage and they still, so it's just a pretty basic modification.
So, everybody good?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the applicant's A&R plan to adjust the lot lines for these 3 lots shown on the plan as drawn.
Second.
So, my motion, John second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. None opposed? We're all set.
Perfect. I'll be by it soon to get that signed lower.
Oh, and with that said, I'm gonna also make a motion that we allow our town planner to act as the board's signatory. Can we do that on these?
Well, we don't need to because.
Oh, we're all here, that's right, we don't need,
Yeah, that's why I
the
wrote-
plan's here more important. I'm sorry, Joe, yeah, we're gonna sign it right now.
That's why I was very excited. Now we're in person. Now we get everything signed right away.
Yeah, right,
But once, when we go back to not in person, which that's what we gotta talk about tonight.
okay.
Considering the new mask, issue.
All right, so we're all set. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time, and we will see you on the 8th.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Bye-bye, thank you.
So we're signing that. While we're doing that though, I'm just gonna talk about what's next. We're looking for, we have an applicant seeking a determination regarding the site plan compliance in regard to the request to obtain a conditional 90 to 120 day occupancy permit for a new residential dwelling at Bella Way located at 491 Main Street. This is a project where we approved a minor subdivision to create Bella Way to allow for the creation of 2 lots. And it's right off past the railroad tracks. And they've done quite a bit of work there. They also constructed the second house that was created on the new lot. But they haven't put the top coat on the roadway yet. And
You saw the guardrail.
the guardrail's installed.
Do you like it?
Looks good.
Yes,
Safe.
Larry and I and Greg Mason visited the site, where we did have a comment letter, and just to set up, I think the idea was that because they still had these few things to do, that what they'd be seeking is, because the house, the new house is built, and they want to be able to get an occupancy permit for the house.
Mhm.
So I think based on Larry's review, then he's going to be making a recommendation to allow a temporary occupancy permit. And he's gonna go into the details about, what the time frame should be. One would be, I think basically the paving can wait until the next year, until it's, possible to do that. And I guess the landscaping might be under like a 90-day to 120-day window. So, hey Larry, you wanna?
Give the plan.
Yeah, I think you summarized it pretty closely to what my recommendation to the board would be. Yes, I think the guardrails in, the binders down, The curbing as required is in, the turnaround is there, the drainage and so forth is there, the grading is in pretty good shape. So I believe that it would be appropriate for the board to consider a temporary occupancy permit with two conditions. The first would be that the finished pavement be done within a 10 or 12-month period. That, for instance, maybe till May 31st of 2022. And that allows them to still get a little more heavy equipment in there to build the barn, concrete trucks and so forth, heavy equipment. Otherwise, needed to build a barn, and perhaps to do some of the finished grading work and all. But they don't need that top coat until next year. However, I think would be appropriate for the board to consider a temporary occupancy permit based on a condition that they finish all the grading and loam and seed within the next 3 months, so we don't miss the window, and so that over the winter and the spring we've got some growth coming in to protect from erosion and so forth. I hope that is clear.
I appreciate it. And the applicant, you've already reviewed those conditions and those seem reasonable?
Yeah.
He said May 31st, and I'm not going to well, the only reason I would question is we had such a wet spring. Do you want June 30th?
June 30th would be.
Only
much
because,
better.
I mean, I know that people were put off this year with all the rain and getting projects done. I don't
Yeah.
want to see you run into that and have us
Right.
on your back. And it's within a year.
Yep,
Uh,
that'd
So,
be great.
okay. Kirk, sir?
One more thing I'd like to say is that, and I included in my letter, that the shorter window to get the finished landscaping and loam and seed in there, it's really difficult to put into writing what needs to take place just a few hundred feet in on the right. So
Right,
if
so-
the applicant owner could have the landscape contractor or contractor that's going to do this finished work get in touch with me so I can meet him on the site, so there's a meeting of the minds as to where and what needs to be done for me to recommend the board for its approval of.
Okay, good. Well, the applicant's aware of that, and it sounds like she's ready to have her engineer or contractor work with you on that.
Right.
All right.
Good. Well, so you need a determination by the board to issue this temporary permit, right? Or,
Right.
pardon me. So,
Right.
I guess
So it-
I'm sorry.
No, so we need a, certificate of compliance from the planning board,
Yeah,
conditional
A conditional certificate of compliance.
compliance.
So it'd be like we've done before with some of the previous, like, applications where they're so far along that there's still these things that are left over
mhm.
that need to be, so we would issue like a limited certificate of compliance that would cover the items and then stipulate that they do these things and meet these conditions by such and such a date, yeah.
All right.
Right,
And where, as much as it's a subdivision, it's also one house.
yes.
Yeah.
So where we're subdivision, I'd want a bond for this, but where it's one house, we're,
I mean,
Right,
it's a definitive subdivision, but it's not like a development, like.
right.
a
And we're not taking possession of the road when you're done.
exactly, it's
Yeah.
a private way and,
Right.
yep.
So I guess I'll make a motion that the board issue a certificate of vote, issuing a conditional approval subject to the condition that the top coat of pavement be installed by June 30th, all landscaping be completed within 90 days, and after a consultation with our technical review agent. And I think that's the items, right?
So the paving was, June 30th.
June 30th, 2022.
And I recommend the other, the date certain, November 15th, I had suggested 21.
Oh, very good for the landscaping. So
Yeah.
then that would be my motion. We approve it with the condition that landscaping be installed by November 15th and that top coat be installed by June 30th.
Right.
Second.
Got Troy second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that was my motion, so, yeah. So everyone in favor, no opposition, the motion carries. So
Right.
hopefully you get your occupancy permit straight away.
So can we, get
I
that
will-
decision,
I'll write that, let's see, so
today's Wednesday?
I should be, I can get it by the end of the week.
Okay,
Yeah, I can get it written up.
that'd be great.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I'll send it over to you.
Super.
Okay.
Thank
no
you,
problem.
thank you so much.
Thank you, congratulations. Good
I
night.
wanna know how I get to call in next time. I'm like,
Deb, there's
what?
not gonna
Well,
be a
you-
next time.
Well, not for you, but.
What
All
about
right.
the sign here?
What's that?
Got some more stuff to sign.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, here. So,
Thank you for your service.
thank you.
That's one of the things we're gonna talk about is whether or
Yeah.
not we're going back to,
Didn't you like Zooms?
I do now,
yeah.
with the masks.
I can't read because my glasses fall.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's like breathing so heavy.
It is hot in here. I thought that thing was an air conditioner. It was a thing of,
It's got warm air.
it's like a
coming out of it.
humidifier. It's just
Well,
to
they
add
told
to
me to
the,
turn it down, but, oh, well, I had to, because it
I'll
sounds,
try and turn it off. I think we should be good at this point.
okay.
all right.
We'll see how that,
We have a filter on.
Yeah. Actually, we're still good.
You're just hogging it all to yourself. I don't think
It's
you are.
sounding like you guys are talking out like underwater. or
Yeah.
bubbly.
we have to also be aware of the people who are listening on these guys.
We're close. We're close, Jack. All
We're
right.
talking a lot.
Coming tonight.
I know it.
You shouldn't have, we all could've gone home early.
That's right. We didn't want to leave
Lots
Kevin
of
hanging though.
conveniences.
I'm gonna hang them.
All right.
We got 491 Main Street.
Yeah, so no, I think the next thing we're on is updated on the status of the completion of the site plan improvements at Raleigh Solar Facility 623 Weathersfield Street. This is,
We're almost there.
what's that?
Sarah was coming in, like, I think we have one more before.
So 623 Weathersfield, the solar facility. We are holding money for performance bonds so that to ensure that the applicant completes the work that we required of them back in December of 2019, I believe, and is still pending. They had made a pretty good effort back in June and July to get things in better shape, but it sounds like efforts have stalled a little bit, and we're back to not having.
So when do we shut them down?
Tomorrow.
I
Well,
like that
What's
idea.
their
I some of this is,
Erosion.
well, I mean,
Dead
they did
trees.
make a lot of improvements. I don't think we should, I mean, they did like plant trees and I guess, Larry, hey, are you still online? We both visited the site. Hey, Larry?
Yep, I'm here.
We're
I'm
gonna,
here.
you wanna give your, take on 623 Weathersfield?
Yes, as Kirkwood's saying, we made a site visit July 22nd. Kirkwood's there, Brent Basic was there, David Takewood. The engineer and the contractor representatives for Fire Fund were there, and legal and some other representatives for the owner. I summarized on August 2nd a letter to the board, some 7 items of observations that I made, and some that I made with Brent together. And I had a conversation with Brent. I sent him a copy of this, and he concurred with the items that and comments that I made in that August 2nd letter. And I don't think that there is a need, unless the board wants to go through each and every one of them. But I think the bottom line of this inspection or site visit that we made back in late July, third week or so in July, was that was kind of disappointed in the growth of the vegetation. There's still a lot of areas that are essentially bare. There's a few areas that probably have a good 75% or so coverage, but generally overall, it's not up to par, at least on July 22nd, to where I would recommend, or I think Brent agreed, recommending that the board have any refund of any portion of the surety being held to stabilize the site with vegetation. One other thing, there's excessive vegetation in a couple of the arrays, or in a couple areas of both arrays in the back that need to be cut. Some of that vegetation may even be impacting the panels themselves. I mean, it's that high. But what it's doing, it may be stunting some of the growth at ground level that needs to take place. So, vegetative management plan was submitted as part of the approval documents, and that suggests, it says in there that the owner or the user should go in and clear that high growth. I think it's twice a year. So that needs to be done. There's a good picture here that I guess Kirk's putting up of the plantings. They were in good shape July 22nd, except a couple of them both the east and the west ends for some reason. And you can also see some swales cut in through between the plantings. That was not on the plan. It was done without the knowledge of either Brent or myself or the board. I understand why it was done, to drain some of the water from south edge of Array Field 2 into Pond 4. And I think it wasn't a bad idea to do that once the area where the trees were planted was raised a little bit. So it created an obstruction or a dam, if you will, kind of held the water back in the Array Field. But at the sidewalk, it was brought to our attention that it is an issue for the owner because they cannot now get around the array field, past the plantings and around the array field to other areas of their property. So I think those swales should be piped and filled so the owner can move through those areas, and the piping will still allow the drainage to take place north to south. That's needed there. There's other comments again. I won't read them all out, but a particular disappointment, I guess you would say, was the first few hundred feet coming into the site where a lot of those soils were quite barren, and there was some erosion taking place in the swale on the left side of the roadway that comes down into basin number 1. And the applicant's engineer was talking about maybe suggesting a modification to that swale to mitigate some of that erosion. I think that's about it. One other thing I want to mention is that was mentioned by the applicant's power fund's engineer, and that is that the seed that they're using, the grass seed that they're using, is an organic type seed, which apparently the one that they found and chose to use is not germinating and coming, not growing the grass as quickly as maybe a more standard seed mix that's used by the state for slope mix, slope stabilization and so forth. I think that's not an issue that the planning board needs to get into. It might be an issue between the owner and the applicant.
Yeah, they've been trying to drag us into that for months, but you're right.
And it kind of goes against the, what the board's objective is, and that is just to stabilize the site. I agree.
Right.
So that's up in the air.
All right, thank you. Anyone from Power Fund with us tonight?
I thought they were going to be the neighbor side.
Okay. Well, I mean, the only thing we could do today is to release the money, which we're not going to do. So I guess we're just going to take no action.
Mr. Chairman, may I be heard?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure, Mr. Beatrice, go ahead.
Is my audio okay?
You're fine.
All right, I want to make just three points. First of all, under the soil plan, it's required that there be 4 inches of topsoil. I filed with the board today a report from Secamp Environmental that confirms that that's not the case. There's an average of 3.5, and in many cases, less than 2 inches, and is confirmed by Mr. Graham's report today. In some places, almost bare. So they have not complied with the topsoil requirements with respect to the 4 inches. Second of all, I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Graham with respect to the swales or the troughs that were dug in that are outside the scope of the plan, that have interfered with the agricultural activities of the property and the ability to cross the property and are totally outside the scope of approved plan. The last thing I want to mention is that there is still contaminated soil on site. We have provided several tests from SRT, Mr. Toomey, to establish that there is contaminated soil on the access road. And I have filed affidavits with the board as well as with court that establish that our fund buried contaminated the soil on site. That was witnessed not only by my client, but by a member of the Mass Environmental Police Department. So there are those 3 issues in my mind and in my client's position is huge with respect to the so-called progress of this development. And I would ask the town to take action to alleviate.
Well, as far as the swales, I mean, they're not on the plan, they weren't approved. If the applicant intends for them to remain, he'd have to submit an as-built plan that shows them and then have the board consider it as a field correction.
I think that's what Larry's saying.
Yeah, and it sounds like Mr. Graham thinks that that would be an appropriate field correction, but we don't deal with your leasing issues, so I
I think Mr. Griggs said it would be appropriate to pipe.
Right.
That's what he's saying.
But that's really more of a land use issue between the landlord and the occupant. So I think we can work with the swale though, is what I'm saying. We've already discussed the contamination. I'm not going to dismiss it, but it's not our jurisdiction.
I understand the contamination issue and the conservation issue.
Yeah.
But the depth of the topsoil is also a planning board, the permitting issue. There is not 4 inches of topsoil on that site right now, not even close. So that's a planning board issue with respect to the permit.
And Mr. Graham, were you able to make any findings regarding the coverage?
No, I wasn't prepared to do that. Mr. Beatrice, if I understood him correctly, said the average by Secamp was 3.5. Is that what?
That was the average, but there was plenty of spots where it was 2 or 2.5.
Yeah, and so what's going to happen where the vegetation is not taking hold, and if that's a topsoil issue, they're going to have to put some more topsoil on there in order to get that vegetation going. If the vegetation gets going, it's going to make its own topsoil. So
I understand that, but they're required under the permit, under the soil plan, to have 4 inches of topsoil. That's the problem.
Right. Well, I'm going to work with Mr. Graham to see how he feels how the final project comes forward, and if we have ground control, erosion, established ground control and erosion control in place, then I think we'll probably, be able to make a field correction regarding the depth of the soil.
Well,
all right. No, thanks for bringing it to our attention, and we'll, be aware of it as we continue to monitor their progress.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, given the fact that it's an agricultural site in generation, that reduction in the 4 inches.
I mean, Mr. Beatrice, with all due respect, it became something very different from an agricultural site the minute your client leased it out to a solar array. So, I mean, again, I don't mean to belabor this point, but we're not gonna sit here and protect the agricultural characteristics of the land that you've already alienated for the purposes of something very, very commercial and industrial.
Let me,
You know what, actually, why don't you continue to address that with the tenant? No, please, Mr. Beatrice, you're gonna have to fall in line with Mr. Beatrice. Should we shut you off? Mr. Beatrice, all right, thank you for your time this evening, Mr. Beatrice. All right, so I chose to cut off that respondent because we're going over territory that is well beyond the jurisdiction of this board, and I'm tired of being misled about what our priorities are here on this site review. So I apologize if we had to do that abruptly, but I'm not going to be sitting here being talked over.
I think everybody on the board is tired of listening to the man away.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let you know.
Mr. Beatrice, I'm not certain how you're still speaking. Good evening. I'm going to move this matter to the next item of business. And there's an item to discuss the zoning bylaw question regarding whether some multifamily dwellings should be allowed in the outlying district with special permit approval. So where did this, who's raising this item?
I was gonna, I think we probably need a more open schedule tonight to be
Yeah.
able to
Maybe we can
discuss.
put that one off.
Yeah. That was just gonna be for board discussion for future.
Sure. And, you know, isn't multifamily allowed in outlying?
It is, but there is actually an issue that Ken's raised in terms of what's actually allowed. That you could, essentially, you could build you could do townhomes, but, well, I think you could do townhomes, but you can't do two-family.
Okay.
So there's contradiction, but you could do one but not the other, that he's actually brought this to me to
Okay.
have board talk about. But it's kind of complicated, so I don't think we should get into it.
Perfect.
We got time, it's just, he wanted me to keep that on the radar, is all on the mix.
And if we can talk about it again, but the ZRC comes up every couple of months, so we should
Yeah.
make sure that gets referred to that
Yeah.
board. All right, so the next item is an informal discussion with Edward Sotheby, the property owner pertaining to 12 Main Street. Looks like he sent a representative this evening.
Yes, may I come up?
Certainly, and if you wouldn't, just for our record, wouldn't mind identifying.
Of course. Hi, I'm Sarah Bork. I'm a landscape designer with Marshman Landscape Design. I was part of the design team on this proposal. A few months ago, it has been approved. We're here tonight for a minor change. So I've got some drawings, I'm going to pass them out. There's 3 copies here of the site plan. And if you'll notice, oh, and it didn't say I'm here on behalf of Mr. Sotheby. He asked me to come.
Thank you.
So in red, you'll see where the change is going to occur. And I also have some architectural drawings that will help you, and we can go through them.
So primarily around the existing building though, right?
That is, yes,
Yeah.
The historic house that's out front and the addition. Okay, so looking at, you guys can look at the site plan, I'm gonna look at the aerial and I will try to describe what's going on. Should I?
You can stand right there, that would
Yeah,
be beautiful.
okay, all right. Okay, so looking at the site plan and the aerial, conceptual plan, we have unit 1, which we call the historic house with the affordable unit, just I want to clarify some terms.
Mhm.
And then the addition to that is unit 2, which is the back unit. And that is the unit that's getting the minor modification. Okay, so the whole idea here is that Mr. Sotheby is getting a lot of requests and interest for first floor living, master bed and bath on the first floor. As you know, this proposal that was approved a few months ago is being marketed to over 55, and this is definitely the market he continues to look for this unit too. So, with this new proposal or this minor change, we are taking away the 2-story garage that was once at the unit 1, the affordable, had a master bedroom at the top. It's now gone. And the historic house had 3 bedrooms, and now it's going to stay exactly as it is. There will be no changes. So the garage becomes, instead of a 2-story, becomes a 1-story. And it actually, that red line on the site plan, it's being pinched in closer by 7 feet. So it's actually making the driveway and the pedestrian experience a little safer. So that's a win. Total square footage is really not going to change here because we're removing the master bedroom from that second floor garage area. And the new unit, which is unit number 2, the master bedroom would be removed from the second floor. It now would be on the first floor as a suite. So let's go through the drawings. Oh, and also to note, this proposal went to historic last Thursday evening as an informal experience to talk about the qualities of the architectural characters. I was not part of that discussion, of course, but I can report that it was very favorable. The plan and the change went very well. Okay, so in drawing number 1, you will see these little red lines, the revised towards the left and revised towards the right. There's these little tiny red lines to help you along with what we're looking at. So drawing number 1, we are looking at the new direction of the barn ridge and the addition of the bedroom, suite, and deck. So that's all right in here.
Are you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this Route 1?
No, that's the
No, this is the
driveway.
driveway. This would be Main Street.
Oh, okay.
The gable end of the historic house faces Main Street.
So this is an addition.
Yep,
They
that's
subtracted
the addition.
7 feet from that way.
I think what the aerial, the conceptual aerial sketch shows you is the relationships of the buildings and this new bump out, if you will. Okay, so drawing number 2 is showing it's really hot in here, guys. Right side elevation, and we are looking at the new barn shape and the proposed master bedroom L, which would be right in here. Again, underneath your drawing, it says revised. Drawing number 3, we're looking at the left side elevation, showing the ridge change in the barn, and the bump out showing the garage now is only a 1 unit, a 1-story. And so no longer do we have that master bedroom up top. And also this also reflects the pinching in of the 7 feet from the site plan. And drawing number 4, we have the rear elevation. This drawing is showing the new L with the smaller windows. So what was previously approved, now this is changing. So this would reflect the master bed, master lab, the walk-in closet, and another lavatory. So that is how that space is configured. And then drawing number 5 in your package is showing again, it's denoted with these small red lines. And it's showing the historic house, everything is the same, nothing is changing. The existing conditions will remain as is. And you can see that the living space of the first floor conditions with the existing kitchen living is staying as it is. And that the new footprint is in red. It's showing that first floor master bath and deck suite. So that's really what we're asking for, is to accomplish the idea of a first floor living.
I think it makes more sense too, because this bedroom above the garage was for this unit anyway, so it's separating their garage from,
Exactly.
it makes sense.
Actually, I think it's better because we're able to pinch in on the side, and now you have a cleaner sideline,
Yeah.
and that pedestrian, because they have to access their unit, it's easier. You can
You
get
got
a
a little
little.
walkway.
Exactly,
Right.
pedestrian experience is better and safer.
And this is, and you're creating new foundation here where this had previously been.
That's right.
Open
So what I
garage space,
understand from the engineer is we are in the safe zone. Where the septic is here, we're in that safe zone.
Okay.
So that could happen. So overall, we are not,
30-foot setback.
we're kind of just reconfiguring space. We're taking from, how do they say that you steal from Peter to pay Paul? Taking from one and putting it to another. So shaving off 7 feet on one side, and this bedroom, approximately, I had scaled it out, it's about 15 feet in dimension.
So the type of change you're looking for today is really, we have only one process, which is modification, or to say it's not a modification.
Yeah, whatever you think,
That's.
Right.
and we
Well,
haven't-
it's a lot easier for you if it's not a modification,
okay,
because otherwise we have to do a public hearing.
okay.
The only thing is that, we haven't had VHB did a review of this, it would really be up to them to decide. So if I get the digital materials from you, then I can forward it to them to take a look at, and they can get back to us by September 8th.
Yeah, and then, I mean, David, well, I'll go through it if I can. If we went the route of, if we had to consider this a modification, then we'd have to have a public hearing, open up the whole matter to review, and deliberate, close, and then vote. If VHB says, you know, this really is the same plan with just a field correction type of thing that we don't really need to take another look at, then we can just issue you a letter saying we're fine, and we'll wait to see it on the as-built when you're done. Which I think that would be preferable, but it really depends on what VHB thinks of as the
It
scope.
depends what they see as the field correction, so.
Right.
Okay.
But outside of that, if they're not okay with it being a field correction, then we have to do it as a major modification.
Okay, all right, well, yeah.
So it seems kind of minor.
Everything about it seems like something we've approved as a,
Right.
we shouldn't say approved, we've viewed as a field correction.
But there might be reasons, he could look at it and see, maybe there's, maybe it messes with the stormwater in some way, and it has to be reconsidered, and, you know, if it requires any level of,
It's a little more roof, but
yeah. So
Might not
he
be.
would have, we just have to get his
Okay,
take
sure.
on that.
And also as part of that, a narrative as to why we're doing this.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
keeping it at, more marketable for the 55 development,
Is that the affordable, you say 55, is that the affordable?
No, the entire development is really being marketed to 55 and
Oh,
over,
okay.
and it's been.
But there's no restriction, am I right? Yeah.
So the affordable unit is out front, that's the historic house, and nothing is changing with that. It's just tweaking that back addition to accommodate that master first floor suite, if you will.
Have they approached DHCD with the,
What language is that?
oh, well, I get Mr. Southerby would be on Mr. Southerby to
Yep.
set up make it part of the housing inventory, the SHI inventory for DHCD, so we would have to set that up.
For the affordable unit?
Yeah, for the award, so that when it comes time to sell it, you'd have to set up a lottery.
So the change is not anything to do with the affordable unit?
Yeah, it's nothing to do, I'm just
Okay,
He
asking.
just wants to make sure.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
Just
since
the
we,
Sotheby's
since we
or
have
whatever.
you're here on behalf of Mr. Subdivision,
That's right.
so I just figured.
gotcha. Gotcha, okay, okay. All right, so VHB, the next step, and
Yeah.
then, email you documents and a narrative as to why this is a change.
Yeah,
Got it,
yeah, just
Okay.
send me, I just forwarded to tomorrow.
thank you.
All right.
Well, thank you.
I also think you should have David frame these and sell them to the.
Oh, he's got plenty of stuff.
Yeah, it's so pretty.
Do you wanna keep this, or do you want us to just to make you digital?
If you could just send me digital, because VHB can review the digital. Can we keep it?
Yes,
Like frame it
you can keep it.
and put it on the wall.
I'll do that.
All right,
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Minutes in me.
yeah, let's do it. We're calling it a night.
Well.
I'm just walking out.
Yeah.
I
All right.
was wondering, like, I second the motion.
All right. We got Troy's motion to adjourn and John's second. All in favor?
Next virtual meeting, we can do it.
Aye. So I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, my motion, Troy second, everybody in favor? Aye.
Are we meeting in person on September 8th, or do you guys want to go back to?
Well, we'll see what the mask thing does.
I kinda wanna continue to do them in person now.
I'd rather not sit through a 3-hour meeting with a mask on.
Well, that's true too.
80 degree.
Just.
Thank you.
Thank you, good evening, Sarah.
So, yeah, it's strongly recommended, yeah, nobody, I don't think we
It's so
have
much
to do it.
cooler out
I
here.
see.
Yeah.
Is it? It's how lucky for us to be in here, right?
Just, I guess we could open it.
It's not cool outside.
Oh, it's not?
So, would you guys rather just do it remotely if we could have to wear masks?
At that point, I prefer to do it
Yeah, we have.
remotely. If we're gonna wear masks.
Yeah, if it's a mandate.
I can't get through this, I mean, I can't read
This
what
is so wet
in the
right now.
document.
Yeah,
I
no,
have to
I,
wear glasses to read, but I
Still
can't.
good.
I can't
Do you still record?
Well, I'm gonna go
It's
talk to
still
my.
live.
I'm gonna go talk to my
Oh,
son.
we're-
I
I
have
think
to
we
see.
we
adjourned.
adjourned.
Oh,
We
I didn't, I
adjourned.
didn't.
That's all right.
It's alright, the neighbors can hear what we talk about.
They're watching anyhow.
Well, they see it's true.